LeVasseur is on. I don't see his face. There he is. Okay, all right. It is 7 p.m. and I'm going to call to order the June 8, 2020 Royal Oak City Commission meeting to order. We're going to begin the meeting by doing a roll call attendance. So I'm Mayor Mike Fournier. I'm here today from my lovely home here in Royal Oak. Commissioner Gibbs.
I'm here.
Commissioner Douglas.
Here.
Commissioner Perush.
Here.
Commissioner Macy.
Here.
Commissioner Dubuck.
Here.
Commissioner LeVasseur.
Here.
Okay, we're all here. There's been a request to adjourn to closed session to discuss collective bargaining. Is there a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Commissioner Gibbs. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Perush. Okay, we'll do a roll call vote to go into closed session. Commissioner Gibbs. Commissioner Gibbs.
You have your mute backwards, Kim.
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Douglas.
Yes.
Commissioner Perush.
Yes.
Commissioner Macy.
Yes.
Commissioner Dubuck.
Yes.
Commissioner LeVasseur.
Yes.
And I vote yes. We're in closed session and we'll wait to hear the Ms. Schwanger let us know when we're officially in. Wonderful. Thank you, Ms. Schwanger. Okay, so we're going to resume the meeting. For those of you, we did have a closed session that started at 7. We opened up the meeting, adjourned a closed session, took care of our business in closed session, and now we're back to the public portion of our meeting, which starts at 7:30. So we're going to begin tonight's meeting with an invocation given by Commissioner LeVasseur, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Commissioner LeVasseur.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. These are remarkable words from the Declaration of Independence, and they launched our nation. And they were followed up just a few years later by the adoption of our Constitution with the explicit stated purpose to establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. Our Constitution further noted that its goal was to form a more perfect union. While our nation is not perfect, part of the greatness of our country is our constant effort to become better. Let's support those who with pure hearts seek peacefully to advance the cause of justice and equity. Let's support those who hold high the values of liberty, freedom, and the pursuit of happiness. Let's together appreciate the greatness of our nation. Let's together continue to strive to make it a more perfect union.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner LeVasseur. Now's the time for the Pledge of Allegiance. I ask that you stand if you can.
Pledge allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, I understand we have some public comment tonight that was called in. Ms. Schwanger, are we ready to pipe in the public comment?
I will be in 1 second with you for sure, Mayor. Let me I'd like to adjust the volume first so that you can hear this properly. Sorry, I'm getting to it. All right, here we go.
My name is Marie Colombo, resident of Royal Oak for 34 years, and I live at 202 West Sunnybrook. I am calling to express my strong support for tonight's resolution supporting solidarity and demanding justice and decrying racism. I'm also requesting that the City Commission create the Human Rights Commission. I believe that the Human Rights Commission is an important step towards making Royal Oak a community that actively dismantles race-based discriminatory practices. My family and I have had the good fortune to thrive in this community, and I want all people to have that same experience and for my city to be known as a leader in creating justice for all. This should not be a partisan issue. Please set polarizing rhetoric aside and create this monitoring body that will help guide our city in being the best that it can be. Thank you.
I'm Bernard, and I live at 2814 Glenwood. I live just a few blocks away from the traffic mess that is the Starbucks on Woodward. And even though I'm a fan of Starbucks, I'm not a fan of what's going on there. At this year's annual meeting of our subdivision, I was reminded from the minutes of last year's meeting that the mayor was our guest speaker. He said there would be a task force to look at that mess after we complained about it. I have spoken to 2 commissioners in the past 2 weeks. No one knows anything about a task force. It also sounds like the city may have painted itself into a corner from a zoning standpoint, and the only thing we can do is write tickets. But it appears that literally nothing has changed in 1 year. I don't know if we have to wait until a dump truck rear-ends a minivan full of kids. I would appreciate somebody in a position of authority to do something besides sit and watch. Thanks.
Linda Gale. I'm a 24-year resident of Royal Oak, and I'm calling to support the formation of a Human Rights Commission. I think that in view of the current situation, it would be excellent for us to have a commission that fully reflects the diversity that makes Royal Oak such a great place to live. Thank you. Linda Gale. I'm a 24-year
I hope everybody's okay. Lou Flurry, 1516 North Maple. They're in the process of redoing our street, and they're not even close to being done yet. But one thing I really like, they made the driveway approaches wider at the street. What a great idea. Make it easier to get in and out with cars parked on the street. It'll work real well in the wintertime. And all the younger drivers keep from bouncing over the curb, although I've done that a time or two myself. But a great idea. I'm really impressed with that. And on a lighter note, I see you guys are still at home and everything. And hey, Randy, are you wearing pants? Okay, you guys take care. Bye.
My name is Katie Gallamora. I'm a resident of Royal Oak for the past 2 years, and I'm calling to speak of my support of the Black Lives Matter movement that's ongoing and calling on our mayor and our city council to do more to make Royal Oak a more equitable community for not only our Black residents and visitors, but also all Indigenous and people of color in our community. Last week in some emails, I emailed with Mayor Fournier, and he was gracious enough to respond to some of my questions about the police force and police brutality, and I really appreciate that. And I emailed back, and I haven't heard back from him, but I wanted to say that I do appreciate the city efforts of updating the antiquated police system with body cams and de-escalation training. That is one great step. And I understand the officer who detained Devin Myers, a 20-year-old African-American boy last year, resigned. And while that might not have happened a decade ago, which Mayor Fournier pointed out, I still think that it's not enough, clearly. The Human Rights Commission that you mentioned, that's a great step, but I have questions. How will you make an effort to include many different voices in a diverse and equitable, but not tokenizing way? So it reflects not only our Royal Oak community, but a welcoming community to invite in folks of color who see a mostly white city where cops detain innocent Black boys on the street because they look suspicious, according to one other white woman. I ask because when I attend city council meetings, the majority of the folks in power and speaking there see white or white passing. What I'd like to request right now is a virtual town hall. When the momentum is so strong and when protests are still going on in our community, I want to involve our community in a conversation about action in education and policing communities of color. I'd love to see a social worker, a psychologist on the panel, and I'd love to have white folks do the work and speak up too, not relying on our Black leaders and educators to donate more of their time and energy to help us. We should come up with solutions. I'd like to see police officers and the Royal Oak Police Department chiefs at this town hall. Let's get together and talk about this. I'd be happy to help organize and spread the word. We could do it virtual, via a Zoom webinar or whatever is safe. Another commitment that the mayor could consider is looking at how we address the use of excessive police force in the city. Thank you so much for listening to me, and I hope to see you out at the protest. So please keep supporting the Black Lives Matter movement. It means so much to all of us.
Becky Putnam, 806 Baldwin. I'm opposed to the proposed tax increases. Expenses should not exceed revenues. Our fund balance should not be used to prop up or finance normal expenses. Opposed to the $30 million in no bid contracts, which denied the taxpayers an opportunity for competitive bidding and pricing. I was also opposed to an approved $58 million bond for the city center without voter approval. I was also opposed to the $5.5 million to a private developer and large campaign donor. The taxpayer money was used to build a parking deck for a private development that is underutilized and is not generating enough revenue to cover the bond, and that the commission gave away revenue-generating taxpayer-owned parking lots to private developers for $1 each. That the increased cost to the city for city workers, healthcare premiums by removing the healthcare savings negotiated by a previous commission. Again, I am opposed to the proposed tax increases. Please do right by the city and its citizens and rethink these proposed tax increases. Thank you. 806.
My name is Arvind Reddy. I live at 618 South Pleasant. I'm calling to strongly support the creation of the Human Rights Commission. I don't know if the commission's mandate is meant to include a review of police department policies, but if it isn't, I think we should have a separate task force to do that as well. We can be grateful for our chief and the officers we have on the force, and I'm grateful for both, but we can still think it wise to review our policies. The chief won't be the chief forever, and the officers we currently have won't always be on the force. We should review our policies to make sure we're proactive about heading off future issues. Thanks, that's all. Bye.
Yeah, I live at 227 East 12 Bell Road, apartment number 8 in Royal Oak. Their zip code is 48073. I'm calling to express my complete support of the agenda item 17, the resolution set forth by Commissioners DeBuck, Macy, and Douglas. I think it's important that we've, as a city, hosted thousands of protesters over the last 2 weekends. It's very important that the city does also recognize their voice and shows their support for the events that transpired, causing the massive protests that have taken place very peacefully within our city. I also would like to express my support for item number 18 on the agenda this evening, the establishment of the Human Rights Commission. I think that's only the next logical and most responsible step to take. And thank you again for all that you're doing, and appreciate it. Yeah, I run at 227.
City Commission, this is George Gomez. I'm pleased to announce, if you're not already aware, that the that the Forgotten Harvest Group has opened a dry goods warehouse in Royal Oak. They are accepting volunteers to help packing food. They're located at 3000 West 14 Mile Road at the corner of Coolidge and 14 Mile, the old Kmart warehouse and offices. So again, Forgotten Harvest is now in Royal Oak, packaging food to help the residents during these difficult times. Thank you for your time.
My name is Tara Chimola. I'm a Royal Oak resident, and I'm calling because first I would like to commend Mayor Fournier for taking the Obama Foundation's My Brother's Keeper's Mayor's Pledge, which includes a review of police use of force policies. I'm also calling because I'd like to commend Commissioners DeBuck, Macy, and Douglas for the resolution they're bringing tonight to demand justice, acknowledge the need to participate as a community in racial healing, and to confront the inequities resulting from systemic bias and racism. Finally, I'm strongly and emphatically in favor of the establishment of a Human Rights Committee to help guide and provide oversight for this critical work at the city level. Thank you very much.
This is Lisa Scarborough. I am calling to say that all lives matter, not just one race. We need to get along as a community and support all races. We also need to support our police department. I do not support the violence that's associated with the Black Lives Matter movement. Although Black lives do matter, all lives matter. We need to come together as a community and also support our police and totally reject the violence that's associated with the Black Lives Matter movement. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
My name is Christina Scarborough. I wanted to say to all of you guys that we need to reject the violence that's associated with the Black Lives Matter movement, but it's still so important that we are supporting the Black community, because not only do the Black lives matter, but all lives matter. And if we want a fair and just society, then we need to be making it fair for all groups of people, including the Black community. So the violence that's associated with this is not okay. And the poor police officers are just, their families right now are in fear right now because of everything that's going on. But it shouldn't be like that. And we need to make strides to make sure that it is not like that. So thank you for your time and for the work that you're doing. It's important. Keep up doing the good work and fighting the good fight, because we need you guys. And so, yeah. So have a good day. Bye.
I live at 1526 West Webster, and I've lived in Royal Oak for 16 years. I want to address the proposed Human Rights Commission and express how grateful I am that it's finally going to be established. Some may believe it's a reaction to the protests against racism and police brutality that we're seeing right now, but I want everyone to know that the impetus for this goes back many months. Back in the fall, I made the suggestion to Commissioner DeBuck that the city have a Human Rights Commission, given that we have a Human Rights Ordinance, plus other factors that had recently occurred, like the African-American man who was stopped by the police outside a restaurant after a woman had called, plus proactive ideas I had about securing protections for LGBTQ residents for the city, like a ban on conversion therapy for minors. That was in the fall. People get busy and things happen, like a pandemic. So when I contacted Commissioner DeBuck a week ago, we both agreed it was timely to get this underway. He shared with me the outline of the Human Rights Commission for the city where our new city manager formerly lived, and I was very impressed. I encourage those who are interested to take a look at it, and also to the one in Ann Arbor, to get a better idea of the function and structure of the Human Rights Commission. I look forward to applying to sit on the commission that's being proposed as we strive to create a future where all Royal Oakers feel that their rights are being protected through both proactive and reactive measures.
This is Caroline Sheldon of Bamlett Avenue. As far as the budget for the city of Royal Oak, expenses should never exceed revenue. A balanced budget is of the utmost importance. Our fund balance should be paid for normal expense. It should not be used to pay for normal expenses. It should be for only extraneous, unforeseen expenses, not for normal expenses. We need a balanced, respectable, multi-year fiscal plan as well. We shouldn't be short-sighted looking 1 year at a time. We can't run out of money by 2023. It's a disgrace that we've given away millions of dollars worth of land for free, backing it up with no big contracts, discussing that tax money funded a private developer's parking deck that's underutilized, causing a huge gap in the bond coverage, negative on the citizens of the city once again, as well as healthcare savings negotiated by prior administration has been removed. That's another cost burden by us, the taxpayers. We can't afford another millage increase to cover the inept financial mistakes of the city. Balance the budget without falling back on a tax increase to cover bad business decisions. Truly, taxation without diligent representation. Thank you.
Commissioner, the mayor, my name is Rich Lockwood. I'm a Royal Oak resident and the owner of a small business in downtown Royal Oak, Motor City Gas Whiskey Distillery. First of all, I'd like to say thank you for your efforts so far in helping out the small business community in Royal Oak during this difficult time. It's a very challenging road for all of us. We appreciate your efforts so far. The reason for the call today is I would like to voice my support for really any and all ideas around social districts where customers could be allowed in limited ways and in limited areas to consume alcohol beverages on the street in downtown. Our business up on East 4th Street would very much welcome a social district in our area to help spur business, but we would also be open to ideas that include all of the downtown central business district. I think this would be a great way to draw some much needed foot traffic to downtown. I think this benefits not only the bars and restaurants, but really the retail shops and all of the businesses downtown, again, during this very difficult time. I hope you will consider these proposals that will be coming soon, and we hope that the businesses down here on East 4th Street can be included and benefit from these initiatives as well. Thank you again for your support, and thank you for your time.
My name is Norma Reganold, and I have been a Royal Oak resident for 36 years. I strongly approve establishing a Royal Oak Human Rights Commission. I feel that participation from the Royal Oak campus of Oakland Community College would be important to the Human Rights Commission. The college has a diverse student and employee population and takes an active role in supporting and recognizing that diversity. I propose that the Board of Commissioners reach out to the college in order for some of its members to become participants of the commission. I have contacted the college and I have made them aware of this undertaking. They are eager to develop a clear understanding of the commission's direction and objectives so they can plan accordingly to support it in the best way possible. I thank you very much for this discussion and for certainly considering very strongly the Human Rights Commission. Thank you to all the commissioners.
Yes, my name is Jim Sheldon. As far as the budget for the city of Royal Oak, I believe the following. Expenses should not exceed revenue. A balanced budget is of the utmost importance. Our fund balance must not be used to pay for normal expenses. It should be for unforeseen expenses only. We need a balanced, respectful, multi-year fiscal plan. We cannot run out of money by 2023. It is a disgrace that we have given millions away in land for free and back that up with no bid contracts. It is deplorable that tax money funded a private developer's parking deck that is underutilized, causing a gap in bond coverage. As well, healthcare cost savings negotiated by prior administration has been removed, thus another cost burdened by the taxpayer. We cannot afford another millage increase to cover the inept financial mistakes of this city. Taxation truly without diligent representation. Balance the budget without falling back on a tax increase to cover bad business decisions. Thank you.
Good afternoon, commissioners. My name is Thomas Allen, 3055 Helen Court. I wish to comment on two matters. First, I'm hoping that there won't be a millage increase coming up for this fiscal year. And secondly, I am very much in favor of a civil rights commission. I had a disability and I have a disability now. And in both cases, I felt like the disability wasn't handled properly. And I think Royal Oak, needs to get some people trained on how to handle these claims. But again, I hope there's no millage increase. And secondly, I think a civil rights commission is justified. Thank you.
My name is Tom Regan. I live at 3126 Glenview in Royal Oak, and I'm calling to urge you to approve the proposal to establish a Human Rights Commission in Royal Oak. We're a country that often engages in moral panics, and we're in a moral panic over racism right now, and that's a good thing. But if we really want to move the ball forward, we need to institutionalize any gains we're making right now. We've seen a lot of gains over the past few days and consciousness raising about the problem of racism, but it would be a good thing for Royal Oak to help institutionalize these gains and setting up a permanent Human Rights Commission. Thank you.
Hey, this is Lily Talicdary at 2903 Vincetta. Thank you to Commissioner DeBuck for leading the resolution in solidarity with those demanding justice and for your proposal to establish a Human Rights Commission. I wholeheartedly support both of these efforts, which will ensure everyone feels safe and welcome in Royal Oak. I hope the Commission will advocate for housing options for all income levels. In America, white households have 11 times the wealth of Black households in America. If we want to promote diversity in our neighborhoods, we need to ensure we are growing and not reducing the number of affordable rentals and starter homes. We want everyone to be able to afford to live in our great city. Thank you for your important work. Take care.
I'm commenting on the budgetary discussions you're having at tonight's City Commission meeting. I think it's a little bit premature to start putting in for additional staff at this point in time. We have a whole, don't know exactly how the revenues are going to pan out from the coronavirus. And especially there's a whole lot of debt that has to be serviced on the parking decks that have had absolutely no revenue these past 12 weeks. So any additional money may have to go to them. We've already got a structural deficit that's apparently going, according to the latest fact sheet here, is going to be depleted even quicker than originally anticipated. So I do not think it's a wise move at this point in any way, shape, or form to start expanding employment opportunities until we see what kind of debt service we're going to have to take care of, what kind of overruns are going to be required for the police station and the city hall based on the shutdown, and a whole lot of other things. So I would be very much against any additional manpower at this time. Thank you.
Hi, this is Paula Martinez-Nante of 101 Curry Avenue. I'd like to express my strong support for the establishment of the Human Rights Commission in Royal Oak as recommended by Commissioner DeBuck. I hope such a commission would be broad in scope and would be a de facto oversight commission for the Royal Oak Police Department as well as all city departments. I would also hope that such a commission would be comprised of a diverse group of Royal Oak residents, young and old, multiracial, and clearly nonpartisan. A Human Rights Commission should be citizen-led and not packed with politicians. I look forward to hearing more about the creation of such a commission. Thank you.
Salter, North Lafayette. I read that our fund balances forecast indicates that ongoing structure deficit, and if the future estimate budget is correct, the fund won't be sustainable. We certainly don't want a tax increase or insufficient services, both of which would likely have a negative effect on our property values and create departures. We already have that threat hovering over. I think that the departments can make changes to their existing expenditures, and the balance should not be used for anything non-essential. Extra decorating and a parking deck, for example. We are in this situation due to no bid contracts, a bond without voter approval, and millions of dollars in gifts to developers. The development approved by the commissioners was, among other things, to improve operating costs, bring high-paying jobs, increase tax revenues, and supply $200 million of economic stimulus. How is the income from the parking garages? Are you considering the fact that these office buildings will have and the garages will have relatively low occupancy if working from home will be more common? Hasn't the Henry Ford building already decreased the original number of workers? Mr. Fenton stated in a previous Democratic meeting a while back that these contracts will protect us under all and any circumstance. You can't get anything for someone who has nothing to give, especially if there's a line in front of you. We need to live within our means and use our funds based on current conditions without assuming there will never be a crisis, and promise that we will have great success by overhauling the city. Thank you.
Dr. Wallace Anderson, 404 Mount Vernon Boulevard. Good evening, Mayor Fournier and Commissioners. Lauren and I have been paying Royal Oak taxes since 1982. That's almost 40 years, and we expect to be doing so for the foreseeable future. We have voted in favor of almost every city millage proposal, plus support for Royal Oak schools, libraries, roads, police, and firefighters. We believe one has to pay through reasonable taxes for the services our city provides. The 2021 budget we are considering tonight, however, raises a lot of red flags. Using part of the general fund balance is not a prudent way to achieve a balanced budget. That fund balance needs to be maintained or enhanced for a true rainy day situation rather than being used for general operating expenses now. I urge this commission to send the proposed budget back to the city administration with a directive for every department to find savings, which will balance expenses with current revenues. Just as we homeowners must balance our expenses and our income. Yes, that may and probably should involve some personnel reductions. A city that cannot live within its income, however, is headed for big trouble ahead, most likely, as the budget projections indicate, by 2023-24. It's just 3 years away. Please plan that now rather than waiting until the crisis is upon us. And please do not delude yourselves thinking that the commission can place higher or new millages on the already highly taxed Royal Oak residents. Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners and Mayor Fournier. I would like to start by thanking you for taking the time to listen to my opinion. I'm a Royal Oak resident and business owner and think it would be in the city's best interest to think seriously about having social districts within the city. We have to act swiftly and thoughtfully to ensure that we are a leading community within Michigan to develop these districts. I feel that this will benefit all types of businesses and keep our residents within our own downtown. I want to propose that 4th Street be a part of this social district, but I'm also supportive of the entire downtown CBD being included. There are several cities across the country that have already implemented these districts in a safe and effective manner. I thank you for the time today. My name is Mary Beth Harrison. I am a citizen of the city. I don't have a case number or an agenda number or anything of that sort for this meeting. I was not given notice of its occurrence, and neither were any of my neighbors. Apparently, the city commissioners are holding a meeting right now on how to handle the marijuana stores in our area. None of us were made aware of that. We were told just recently that Commissioner Douglas had put the information on social media and no one responded. Well, I would like to know what social media platform she put that on, because I went back a year into any of the postings she made against the city of Royal Oak and there was no mention of it. So I would be very curious to know where that posting was put. I wonder why we were not giving a notification in the mail. Any of us that have got notification in the mail about the Army Navy surplus store turning into pawn shop, we were all aware of that. But this kind of seems a slightly underhanded, very underhanded way of saying that you did your job, but nobody knows about it. And let me just remind you that these dispensaries will cause problems in the neighborhood. They're going to devalue our property. They're going to put our life and our family's life at risk because crime will increase. Police will be living over here. Anybody looks at me cross-eyed from these fence, I will call the police immediately. It's a proven fact that the crime goes up and nobody wants to live around it. I know none of you want to live around it. One of you even admitted to me that you did not want to live around it. Anyway, I am very upset at the way this is handled. I think I need to remind all of you that you are elected to protect and serve me and my neighbors. We are your constituents. We are the people that put you in power, and we are the people that can take you out of power. You need to be communicating very clearly to us what is going on so we have a chance to respond. And that is not being done. And you all should be highly ashamed of yourselves. You're making Donald Trump look like a darn choir boy. Thank you.
Kim Moon, K-I-M-M-O-O-N. I live at 815 Lewis in Royal Oak. I would like to express my support for the creation of a Human Rights Commission. I think it's very important for the Royal Oak Police to have accountability for its citizens. Transparency is very important as well. I would really like to see, kind of more engagement with the public, publication of statistics on things like the racial makeup of people stopped in traffic stops, how much money has been paid out for lawsuits resulting from excessive force on the police department, things like that. This is a big conversation that's been kind of a long time coming, and the police department really needs to build trust with the community, and to do that, they have to be able to take criticism constructively, and they need to be transparent, and, officers that use excessive force need to be disciplined and possibly need to be terminated. And until there's accountability and transparency, the community has no reason to trust the police department. So I'd like to see more outreach to the community and more transparency. Thank you so much. Bye.
Mayor Fournier, that completes the public comment for this evening.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Schwanger. This brings us to the approval of the agenda for this evening. Does anyone wish to make a motion to approve the agenda? Commissioner Perush?
Yes.
By Commissioner Perush, a second by Commissioner LeVasseur. Discussion on the approval of the agenda. All right, with none, we'll call for the vote. We'll start with Commissioner Dubuck.
Yes.
Commissioner Douglas.
Yes.
Commissioner Macy.
Yes.
Commissioner Perush.
Yes.
Commissioner LeVasseur.
Yes.
I vote yes. Commissioner Gibbs.
Yes.
All right, we have an agenda. That brings us to item 10, the consent agenda. Does anyone wish to pull anything off the consent agenda to talk about separately? Okay, Commissioner Perush.
I believe it's item I, dealing with the stormwater utility issue.
Okay, item I, and then I saw Commissioner Macy's hand and then Commissioner LeVasseur.
Same as item I.
Okay, Commissioner LeVasseur.
My items are items I and K.
I and K. Okay, anybody else? All right, the consent agenda now consists of City Commission meeting minutes from May 18th, City Commission special meeting budget work sessions, May 13th, May 20th, and May 28th. City Commission special meeting marijuana work session meeting May 19th, 2020, June 2nd and June 5th, 2020. Approval of purchase orders, approval of Royal Oak School District letter understanding of levy summer 2020 taxes on Royal Oak properties, approval of Clawson School District letter of understanding to levy 2020 taxes on Royal Oak properties, approval of engineering division 2021 annual fees, approval of restrictive covenant with easements at 4600 Coolidge Highway, approval of appointment of representative to the Southeastern Oakland County Resource Recovery and Water Authorities Board of Trustees, approval of Oakland County West Nile Virus Fund Program Grant, approval to participate in the Clinton River Watershed Council's Water Towns, approval of tentative agreement. Is there a motion on the consent agenda as presented? Commissioner Macy, seconded by Commissioner Perush. Discussion? All right, with no discussion, we'll call for the vote. Commissioner Gibbs. Commissioner Gibbs.
Okay, yes.
I vote yes. Commissioner LeVasseur.
Yes.
Commissioner Perush.
Yes.
Commissioner Macy.
Yes.
Commissioner Douglas.
Yes.
Commissioner Dubuck.
Yes.
Okay, all right, the consent agenda is approved. Commissioner Perush, item I, contract modification for professional engineering services for stormwater utility implementation. The floor is yours.
We started this stormwater utility project quite a while ago, and the original work that OHM did in terms of developing a schematic in order to evaluate the various properties in the city. They did an overview scan of all of the properties in the city to determine the various rates and fees that would be applicable for the various sizes of property and so on and so forth. But we kind of ran into a roadblock when, number one, we were waiting for the City of Detroit litigation about stormwater utilities to move forward. And then also we were waiting for state legislation to be approved so that we could pattern our stormwater utility after the state legislation. And that seems to have hit a roadblock too. So my question to Holly and the engineering department is it worthwhile to continue with this contract at this point, given the fact that I think both of those obstacles, so to speak, are kind of in a holding pattern right now and don't seem to be moving toward resolution one way or another. My concern is that the material that OHM did might get stale and we might have to do it all over again, depending upon how long it takes for these two obstacles to be removed. So I guess what I'm looking for is some comments from Holly in the engineering department as to how they feel about this, as to whether it's worthwhile to continue with this contract and continue with OHM doing these little bits and pieces on a going forward basis, or whether it's just time to say, okay, we're going to halt this right now and come back to it when we have more of a green light sense that things are actually going to go forward.
Sure, and those are all really valid points and great questions. So I did a little research today just to kind of see where those two pending issues stand. I spoke with Mr. Gillum about the lawsuit against the city of Detroit that we're waiting to hear on. And it sounds like that hasn't had any movement since March, and probably won't for a while. So that I can't say exactly when that's going to be resolved, but I agree it's going to take some time. And then same thing with the legislation at the House. You know, I feel like every season we hear they're considering it, it's about to go through committee, and then it doesn't. So that's what I heard today is, you know, this summer we're really optimistic. We think it's going to start moving. But, you know, I don't want to get too hopeful on that. So that's where those two issues stand. Right now with the stormwater utility, we've basically stopped work. We did one last analysis to basically incorporate decks, you know, people's decks in their backyards to be considered pervious area instead of impervious. So that required a little bit of rework from the sub-consultant Quantum who did the flyover and then analyzed what was pervious and what was impervious. So that's part of what I'm bringing tonight. That's work that's already been performed. That's the $4,350 on there. And then my thought was to ask for additional budgets. So if these two issues get resolved, we're ready to jump and start moving forward, not knowing when that could happen. If we were trying to meet a deadline, for example, because we want to start it in July at the beginning of a fiscal year or something like that. I didn't want to have a delay of 2 to 4 weeks trying to get a commission approval for that. But that being said, I don't need that $10,000 right now. We've stopped work really until we have something to tell us what to do to move forward with it. So at the minimum, I would request that we get the $4,350 approved tonight. And then the $10,000 was really just a proactive amount, but we don't need to approve that necessarily tonight.
Okay, thanks. Given that information, I would be comfortable with the $4,000 to pay them for the little bit that they did, you know, that work that's already been performed. And I think I personally would be more comfortable holding off on the $10,000 at this point, just because in my view, it's going to take a period of years before those two issues get resolved rather than months. And we could be into an entirely different budget year, a different budget situation when that actually occurs. So I think we can revisit this, and certainly if, you know, miracles happen and those things get resolved, come back to us. But we certainly are going to have a heads up that that's going to happen. And I think we'd have time to adjust and to allocate funds if we thought it was necessary. But at the present time, I just don't see this thing going forward anytime soon whatsoever.
Hey, anybody else? Commissioner Macy?
Commissioner Perush pretty much summarized what I was going to say, and Mrs. Donahue's answers pretty much answered everything I had to ask as well. I just wanted to add that we did this contract extension fairly recently already, and part of the problem we're having is that the initial calculation, which was designed to make this whole system more equitable, turned out not to be a great calculation. And I mean, I think OHM made it right to their credit, but I think in the midst of that, this body was, to some extent, or at least I was, reconsidering whether or not this is even something we want to move forward with in the long term, whether or not this, regardless of how the litigation was resolved. So I feel the same as Commissioner Perush. I think it makes sense to approve a resolution for the $4,000 that's for the $4,300 or whatever it is that's already been spent, and then hold off on the $10,000 until we're closer to a point where we're ready to do that work. So I'll make that motion.
Motion by Commissioner Macy. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Perush. The motion is to approve the $4,350. Any discussion on this? Commissioner LeVasseur?
I have two concerns with this matter, and one of it being that $4,350, the other being the $10,000 in general. We've had this discussion on numerous occasions before. We frequently have staff come to us and basically say, we've already spent the money. Now we want the City Commission to approve paying for those services. And that's not the way this is supposed to be working. I don't know of any reason why this particular situation had to move forward without coming to the commission first. It may have made a lot of sense to move forward. Maybe it did, maybe it didn't. But that should have come to the commission before the money was spent, so to speak. This commission shouldn't be rubber stamping expenses. I think we need to have a strong policy on this. I think for those situations where staff decides to spend money and then seek confirmation after the fact, there needs to be accountability for that, but specifically who authorized it, what were the reasons why they authorized it without coming to commission first. So I have a problem with that happening. It's not just one time or two times. We've had that several times happen where staff has made those type of decisions. And I can certainly understand in some circumstances where you have a very urgent need to move quick. Here, I don't see it. I don't see that there was any urgent need to move quickly and make that decision, make that call without coming to the commission first. Second, with regard to the 10,000, we've already got about a quarter $250,000 invested into this. And frankly, I don't know that we're ever going to see any benefit for residents as a result of that. It's sunk costs. I can't see authorizing any additional funds for this project without seeing that there's some actual tangible benefit that we're going to have for the residents of our city.
All right, Commissioner Douglas, I saw your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Happily, we have a policy for this. Our policy is that the City Commission has to approve expenses over $10,000, but $4,350 is clearly under that and is within the staff's purview to spend. Secondly, we, the commission, have made it clear that we do want advance approval for expenses over $10,000. And so our city engineer was proactive and came to us with a request for an expenditure, acknowledging that it might not happen, but wanting to give us plenty of time to consider this. So I think we are looking at a system that's working perfectly, and I, of course, will support this motion.
Anybody else? Yeah, I'll be supporting this motion as well. I mean, clearly we have highly credentialed and high-performing staff that work for us, including Ms. Donahue, now Mr. Brake. You know, our job and intent is not to micromanage a $4,350 project. And then, you know, I mean, we pass a budget every year. We give direction on where they should go, and we hold them accountable for the results as a community. And if the results aren't there, we find new people to fill their spots. But I think, you know, trying to babysit or make it, you know, our staff feel unempowered is only going to lead to the worst results. We have to build a culture of proactiveness. We have to build a culture of staff feels like they're appreciated. We have to build a culture where staff feels empowered to make some decisions with direction from us to get the job done. Since we meet frequently, we have a city manager on board. We've had a city manager on board prior that these decisions are gone over with. And so I think, you know, bringing up the argument and communicating to staff that, you know, don't do your job unless we tell you to do it is just a really bad precedent. So I want to say, Ms. Donahue, I personally, as the mayor, appreciate the work that you do. I appreciate your proactiveness. I appreciate you following the processes we put in place. And I appreciate you taking the stuff that you work on so much better for our community. So with that, I'll call for the vote.
Mr. Mayor.
Start with Commissioner Dubak.
Yes.
Commissioner Douglas.
I'm sorry, I think Commissioner LeVasseur had his hand up before he.
I did.
I'll let you speak. Let's get through the vote and then you can talk. I'll give you the floor right after we vote, okay?
Mr. Mayor, the purpose is to have our discussion before we have the vote. And you prematurely called for the vote before checking to see if there was any further discussion.
I don't know that I prematurely did. I called for the vote like I do on many other topics.
You got the first word in, the last word in, I should say, and then you didn't see if there was any further discussion.
LeVasseur, you're out of order. Privilege of the chair. I'll let you speak after. We're in the process of voting. Commissioner Douglas.
Yes.
Commissioner Macy.
Yes.
Commissioner Prush.
Yes.
Commissioner LeVasseur.
No.
Commissioner Gibbs.
No.
Okay, Commissioner LeVasseur, we're through the voting process. As chair, I'm granting you a minute.
Thank you. As you're well aware, we have on a number of occasions had this issue come before us. Oftentimes, the amount in issue has been in excess of the $10,500 that we've talked about or we've authorized through resolution. The idea, though, is that the decisions be made. I mean, if we're paying a utility bill, that's one thing. We specifically deal with that. But when you're making a decision on whether or not to spend funds of this city, whether it's $4,000 or $10,000 or whatever the case, and if it is a something that's outside the norm, then you should come to this commission. And the fact that this motion is before us today is indicator that we believe that this is something that needs to be commission's approval. Otherwise, this motion makes no sense.
Thank you, Commissioner LeVasseur. Now, the topic is done. We'll be moving on to the next subject, Commissioner Macy. Ms. O'Donoghue, thank you very much for your efforts. Nice work. We are moving on to item K, Commissioner LeVasseur.
Thank you. This is with regard to the design of the new Central Park Centennial Commons. I know we've had previous discussions before with regard to the location of the memorial honoring our soldiers who have lost their lives in the service of the country. I still am of the strong belief that the location that memorial is in at present is the ideal location. We've received a lot of feedback from concerned citizens who do not want to see that moved. And I do believe that if we're going to go to the architects and ask them to do additional design work, is with the idea that they keep that memorial in its place and make the rest of the park work around that location, and not simply decide that it's not important enough to keep in that location.
Okay. Commissioner Dubuck.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We've discussed this item multiple times. About a year and a half, almost 2 years of work went into the design of the park with professionals, with substantial opportunity for public input, and the citizen board that helped to work with the designer and with the public to take, again, substantial input, unanimously recommended this design. This commission approved that design. We can keep, trying to get talking points out there, but let's just complete the business of the city. I'll move for approval.
Motion by Commissioner Dubuck. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Macy. Discussion. Okay, I don't see anybody with their hand for discussion. So this definitely won't be premature. I'll call for the vote. We'll start with Commissioner Gibbs.
No.
I vote yes. Commissioner LeVasseur.
No.
Commissioner Baruch.
Yes.
Commissioner Macy.
Yes.
Commissioner Douglas.
Yes.
Commissioner Dubuck.
Yes.
All right. That's a vote of approval. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Filipski. All right. This brings us now, we're done through all the items that were on the consent agenda. And this brings us to item 11, which is the public hearing and adoption of the 2021 fiscal year budget and General Appropriations Act. So the public is aware, we've had several well-publicized planning meetings. I think we had 3 of them, if I'm not mistaken, where we went over every department, every line item in the budget. We had Ms. Rudd and her team go back and recalculate a few things. We managed a few things from a revenue side with state revenue. There's a whole story behind it, but we have a budget here in front of us that we're looking to move forward with for the time being, albeit the budget is a living and breathing creature, and it could change again in August with new information, and we make adaptations, things of that nature. But we did have a lot of opportunity as commissioners to ask questions over the better course of a month, and with several meetings go back and forth. So we should be in good shape to have a succinct conversation tonight, because all questions should be answered, and we had our time to do it. And so I will hand it over. I'm not sure. There's 3 individuals here that I think we have Ms. Rudd, we have Mr. Gillum, and we have Mr. Brake. So I'm looking at Ms. Rudd. She's taken the lead before, so I'm going to take the risk and say, Ms. Rudd, it's yours. Ms. Rudd, do you mind unmuting? My lip reading got really bad since my eyes have prescriptions changed a little bit.
Sorry about that. Good evening. Well, you covered most of what I was going to say. I have included, hopefully I've captured all of the commission's changes from the 3 workshops, mainly at the end of the 3rd. I think we went over the final decisions of the city commission and what they wanted to see in that final document and resolution. So hopefully that is all captured there in attachment 1. I will not go over it. What you'll see there also is some of the effects of
when reducing the IT expenditures and the motor pool expenditures, how that trickles down to some of the other funds. Those were included on attachment 1 as well. And then, yeah, finally, attachment 2 is the resolution with the modified numbers. I won't go over all the line item changes, but I will answer any questions if there are any.
Commissioner LeVasseur.
Thank you. Ms. Rudd, at the end of the day, how much fund balance are we using if we adopt this budget?
For the general fund, use of fund balance will be $2,878,790.
And the police fund, the public safety fund, I should say.
Public safety fund. Let's see. If you give me one moment, we adopted a little differently, so it's not in the resolution. It's just total expenditures and total revenues. But if you give me a moment, I can answer that.
Commissioner LeVasseur, are these questions that you just thought of now? Or did you not have a chance to ask them over the last week or two?
Mr. Mayor, there's questions that we have asked in the past, and I would think that they would be very easy to respond to.
I have it right here. $606,180 for public safety.
Okay.
Original budget was $982,020.
All right, so we shaved off a little bit there. So combined between those two, let's see if I can do math in my head, 3.4 million, give or take.
2.9 and yeah, 3.5.
All right. Any other questions for Ms. Rudd? Commissioner Dubois.
Ms. Rudd, I heard a public comments. I'm curious. Are there tax increases or millage increases in this budget?
The millage rate is decreasing about. The millage rate is decreasing about 0.26 of a mil, a little over a quarter of a mil in total.
This budget lowers the millage rate on residents.
The city millages. Mm-hmm.
There seems to be some confusion about that, so let's make sure we're 100% clear on that. Thank you.
Any other questions for Ms. Rudd? I have a question for Mr. Gillum, perhaps. I knew tonight we were going to have a public hearing. I assume because there's a public hearing published that our normal remote call-in public comment was the sufficient medium to solicit the hearing for this. Am I correct on that?
That's correct, Mr. Mayor. And there was a published notice of the hearing that was, I believe it was in the Tribune that it ran.
Okay.
But, yes, we have satisfied the requirements for a public hearing.
Good. Usually we forget to do these here, or I do sometimes, and we go straight to the meat of it. And this time it's, already done. Okay. All right. So Ms. Rudd, can you spend about a minute talking about what your expectation is out of the commission for tonight and sort of the process of what we need to look at and what we need to approve, maybe kind of walking through how some of the policies, the millage rates, how you want to do it, that sort of thing, the resolutions?
So there are 9 resolutions in the packet. The first resolution is the actual budget for the general fund and all of the special revenue funds. We do not ask for a request to adopt anything over a 200 series fund. So those are included in the first 3 pages of attachment 2. Then the resolution number 2 sets the 8 city millage rates. Not only is the total reduced, each one of the 8 are reduced. there are none that are equal or greater than they are the current year, fiscal year 1920. So each of those are lower than the current year. And then resolution 3 authorizes the tax administration fee, that is the 1% fee that gets applied to each of the tax bills. Resolution 4 are the water and sewer rates. The resolution number 5 are purchases. That basically says that we can incur natural or regulated monopolies and other sole source provider expenses without city commission approval. Resolution 6 is purchasing authorization. That basically says that no purchase in excess of $10,500 will be made without city commission approval. And then public work improvements over $25,000 will be awarded to a responsible bidder. Resolution 7 allows a transfer from major to local road funds. And also it allows me to do transfers between administrative transfers within appropriation centers without going to city commission. And then resolution 8, the PEG fees that the community media network, there'll be a 0.5% PEG fee provided to them, and the city keeps the other half of the 1%. And then finally, resolution 9, the financial policies. There are numerous in the beginning of the budget book, and none of those changed from the current fiscal year. They all remain the same.
We got 9 resolutions ahead of us, and we should probably do them one by one. We've cleared the hearing criteria. So I will leave it to the commissioners to commence the process to make resolutions. Commissioner Dubuck.
Thank you, Mayor. Spent a lot of hours going through this budget. I know staff has spent 100 times that making this work. I want to commend Ms. Rudd and her team and everyone else for going back to the drawing board like we asked to really reduce that fund balance number. I think we cut 40%, 35% from that to make sure that we're keeping that fund short up if we have a tight couple of years here. So thank you for that. I think this budget provides for the essential services of the city to maintain quality of life for our residents while maintaining fiscal responsibility. We've built up substantial fund balance over the last 10 years for a rainy day. We were debating it last year. Is it too big? And we said, no, it's our rainy day fund. And clearly, given the economic impact of COVID, it is raining. So it's appropriate to spend down some of those funds. So with that, I will move for the first resolution.
A motion by Commissioner Dubuck, a second by Commissioner Perush. Discussion. I'll go with Commissioner LeVasseur.
Thank you. Just to be very clear here, we do have a rainy day that's been brought to us by COVID-19, but that doesn't explain the significant structural deficit that we have in this budget. That predates COVID-19 significantly. And that's something that we knew about a year ago. We knew about it at the beginning of this year before COVID-19 ever hit us. And simply put, there's not been enough done here to address that concern. Commissioner Dubuck correctly points out that there's no planned millage increase for this year with regard to the budget. In fact, there is reductions that are brought forth because of constitutional requirements that there be reductions. But it's very clear, you look at this budget and you look down the road and you see the projections that our finance department has given us. And there's no question in my mind that if there are not significant changes, that when it comes time to bring up the public safety millage for renewal, that in order for there not to be significant cuts at that time, that millage would have to be 1 to 2 millage points higher than what it presently is. And that's what the people calling in had concerns about, is looking down the road, having that foresight to know that that's a concern and it needs to be addressed. It needs to be addressed sooner rather than later. From my vantage point, we have roughly 3 weeks here to get this done and get it done right, or at least make some more significant progress toward cutting into that structural deficit. That's time that should be used wisely. It's time that, if need be, we should come back for special meetings in order to address that. But this proposed budget with the expenditures as is not showing enough that we're taking seriously the financial issues before us.
Commissioner LeVasseur, outside the fact that we've met for over 12 hours and had 3 different meetings, how come at this point, I mean, in all those, I didn't hear a singular proposal from you what to cut in order to balance the budget for the fiscal year 2021 or even for next year? You're making presumptions or saying things now that we should have. And I got to tell you, I apologize if, I didn't note, but I don't recall from any of our previous budget meetings that you made any meaningful suggestions that would be able to eliminate, any expenses to fit the math that you just proposed. So I have to tell you, I'm a little off guard. I just want to make sure, and I think even Commissioner Macy made the point in our last budget meeting, any ideas, anything right now we should know, we should talk about. We have a tight deadline like we do, after the budget session. I'm just shocked and surprised that we're at this point tonight. So can you elaborate what to cut in the budget for this fiscal year?
Well, Mr. Mayor, you will recall, or maybe you don't recall, but at the last meeting that we had on this topic, I highly recommended that our city manager meet with the department heads and come back with some ideas for us on ways that we can balance this budget. This is such a large problem that it's going to require that the people who work day in, day out handling these things identify areas of possible savings. Part-time, $20 a meeting city commissioners, we're policy folks. We need the details from staff on what our options are. And that's the way this thing should be driven. If you're looking for me to say, cut this, cut that, for the last 2.5 years, I've been doing that. I've questioned spending $250,000 on the rain tax, so to speak, the thing that we were just discussing earlier. I've questioned.
We're talking about the 2021 budget, not about suggestions you made.
Understood. But the thing is, you get where you are today by the decisions that you made yesterday, and this commission and previous commissions have made plenty of very poor decisions.
So you're asking the staff to go back exactly how they did and went back and made proposals as far as what they could cut. And, the last budget meeting we had, we said that was okay. We're at, and we got to have a rainy day fund because this is all driven by a big hit.
That's not what I said. That's not sufficient.
So I'm asking you got to give direction to staff. You got to say, look, I want to cut public safety, or I want to, go default on our pensions. I mean, these are the things that, staff needs direction from, because we're not talking about, we're eating into our rainy day fund because we have an issue with state shared revenue that's probably temporary. So,
well, this budget also calls for adding 3 or 4, I forget exactly, 3 or 4 additional employees that we don't presently have. And that's just one of them. I mean, the thing is, it just didn't go far enough. I wanted the staff to go back, bring us some additional ideas. And that was something that the rest of the commission didn't choose to give that type of direction.
Well, in this particular case, I mean, I always trust staff, and they came back, unlike item I on the agenda earlier. But Commissioner Perush, you had your hand up next.
I think in response to Commissioner LeVasseur's request last meeting, Mr. Brake, I apologize. I hate to speak for you. You probably should speak to this yourself. But I think you very clearly said you had some very definite ideas as to how to restructure certain expenses within the city and restructure the way we do certain things, but it can't be done and it can't be fleshed out in the next 3 weeks, but that you definitely have some ideas to solve this issue on a going forward basis. That was very clearly said by Mr. Brake. So it's not like there was no response, and it's not as if the commission didn't think that your issues were correct. But Mr. Brake quite reasonably said, give me time, since I've only been here 5 days, to develop some actual plans for dealing with the structural deficit issue on a going forward basis. So I reject the idea that this issue hasn't been addressed and that we're just sweeping it under the rug. The second thing I'd like to point out is that this budget, the proposed budget of the city, has had a structural deficit built into it ever since Don Johnson started doing the budget back when he started as finance director almost 20 years ago. He did it purposefully so that we would take a long-term view of expenses and revenues and look ahead. This structural deficit goes out for 5 years, or this projection goes out for 5 years. That's unusual for municipalities. If they have any projections in their budgets at all, it's usually 2 or 3 years, which I think is the state standard. We go out 5 years so that we can look ahead and decide what we need to do so that we don't run into a deficit situation. Don Johnson has done it for 20 years. This is year number 21. And every single year we have produced a balanced budget. Even in the years of the recession during 2009, 2010, 2011, we can deal with it and we will deal with it. And I'm confident that Mr. Brake will be able to deal with it along with our input. So the idea that we have, suddenly we have to solve the structural deficit problem in 3 weeks is totally unrealistic and inappropriate. And I don't think it's a sound basis for rejecting this budget.
I had Commissioner Macy, and then I think I saw Commissioner Douglas. No, just Commissioner Macy then.
Well, Commissioner Pruitt has taken part of what I was going to say. But, I think Commissioner LeVasseur blaming past commissions for our faults needs to take perhaps a look in the mirror, because I believe last year's budget was passed unanimously. It was not raining then, as I recall, there was no coronavirus. And yet there was a structural deficit built into that budget as well, for the reasons that Commissioner Pruitt has just made very clear. I think I brought up at every budget session and at every one of these meetings for the 3 years that I've been on the commission, that the projections going out have been so wildly inaccurate for every single year that they've gone out. And they are, as Commissioner Pruitt said, a check on us to look ahead in the most conservative way possible. And so I understand Commissioner LeVasseur is using those numbers to show that we are going to be, whatever it says, negative 37% general fund balance in 5 years. If he'd like to take this off the commission table and make a bet, I'll make a bet on that. Pretty sure that's not where we're going to be, and he knows it too. Every year we adjust the numbers, and I think what hasn't been mentioned so far is that this year we've already said repeatedly that we're planning to adjust the numbers again in August, because what's happening right now is unprecedented. We don't know what's going to happen with our numbers. And as Mr. Brake has said publicly and in the media, Royal Oak is in an interesting position in that most of our tax revenues come from our property values, which won't see a hit for several years likely in this. There's going to be a lot of funds that are perhaps missing from the states. There may be funds coming in from the federal government. We don't know what this budget is going to look like. And we're certainly not going to be spending the entire amount of our next year's budget in the next 3 months before we take a look at it again. And if things look quite dire then, you can be sure that we're all going to be thinking very seriously about making cuts and asking the department heads to bring us those numbers. I think this is a good budget for where we are right now. I think it's balanced for what we are doing. We can't let the fund balance just grow wildly. As I've said in the past, it doesn't make sense. It is a rainy day fund, as I have been repeatedly told. And here it is at a rainy day. It makes absolute sense to be using it this year.
I'll just add to Commissioner, go ahead, Commissioner.
Yeah, the bet that I would be inclined to make is that when it comes time to renew that public safety millage, that the commission will ask for more than a simple renewal, simply because that's the direction that this budget is taking us. That's the direction we've been heading in. And yes, we knew a year ago that we were in a situation that there was a structural deficit. That was brought up to our attention at that time. We continued to approve expenditures that have proved to be a matter of poor judgment. We've done that a number of times over the year and previous commissions. I'll point out, everyone knows that I was not in support of building the new city hall and the new police station. That right there, that's $2 million, over $2 million a year to cover the bond on that.
Commissioner, let me remind you, those are decisions that have been made unanimously by past commissions, and that unless you're suggesting that we default on our bonds for those projects that the public widely supported, I would say that let's keep to the 2021 budget, things you want to do.
Those decisions have already been made for us, and they were made for us in part by you, Mr. Mayor, and they put us in this situation. So,
I'll just add to Commissioner Macy's point. I think, we're going to take a look. It's a living, breathing creature. We have Mr. Brake on board. He's going to need some time. And we took a pretty conservative approach, I think, on the revenue here with some of the state shared revenue as far as some estimates we think we're going to get in, but also, kind of looking at the statutory amount and adjusting our expenses accordingly, dipping into the rainy day fund. But the reality is I'm not going to be supporting any budget to preemptively fire a bunch of EMS fire personnel in the height of a pandemic because, because we took a conservative projection on revenues. We don't know where the HEROES Act is going to be. It looks plausible. We got to look at where we're at with county funding and all these other things before you make those sort of cuts. Our revenues are going to be stable from a property tax revenue. We were told time and time again that was the case. And, so I think this budget makes a lot of sense. We put some safeguards in it. We said, hey, we're going to put in these necessary hires that pay for themselves, but, they still have to bring them to the table and get our approval. And if the climate's changed, then we don't approve them. If the climate hasn't changed and things are better than we think, and we still think it's a great case, then we approve it. This isn't a bundle of all of our decisions for a year. This is a budget planning document, so we know where we're at. And every single financial decision in this document comes before the table. And every time we're going to have a better reading on the climate, and we're going to be able to thumbs up, thumbs down, any proposal, any hire, anything. But we have a document here that guides us along the way, albeit it's conservative on the revenue side. It still is a guiding document. And with Paul Brake's help and with staff's help, and as we learn more through this pandemic into August, we're going to learn a lot more. And it might mean we cut more. It might mean that we're safe. We get more revenue coming in. We just don't know. And we're going to use this document for now because really we're planning for the next week, the next month, the next day. And as more information comes in, we're going to adjust this budget. And that's what we do on every budget every year. And that is the reason why we've been able to accumulate, at least since I've been on the commission over 9 years. I mean, we've seen these negative numbers. Commissioner Perush has been here, Commissioner Dubuck, Commissioner Douglas. That's the way we've been able to accumulate a $15 million, $20 million almost at one time fund balance is because of the way we do our budget process, which has always been hyper conservative. And this is what we have in front of us today. And I hope it's not completely accurate. I hope we find ways, but we have to be fiscally conservative. We have to give discipline to our staff and let them execute, let them find innovations. And then when we get our decisions to make, we get a proper gauge of the environment at the time and we make a call on every expense. That's what we do. That's our job. So we have a resolution in front of us. Anybody else? This is resolution 1 in the budget document. Commissioner Perush.
Just very quickly, everyone points to the debt service and the debt payments for the city hall, the police station, and so on. Unless I'm reading the budget document incorrectly, the actual debt service load that we're carrying this year is not contributing to the major fund balance issue. The fund balance problem comes from expenditures in other funds, specifically the public safety fund. That's where the problem lies. And that's where we've got to have some kind of solution going forward. It is not contributed to by the additional debt that was taken on by funding the police station and city hall. In fact, 2 major bond issues that were issued in 2006 and 2007 are gone away. And our other debt service loads on the other bonds that were issued between that period of time and now are also reducing. So overall, our debt service is not contributing to the fund balance problem. In fact, next year, it will be contributing even less to the overall expenditures within the city budget. So this idea that it's the new city hall and it's the new police station that are pushing us into this debt situation is just completely inaccurate.
And I'll just add, Commissioner Perush, the parking structures are covered by a non-recourse, non-full faith and credit of the city. So that's a revenue bond, which is completely different. It doesn't affect taxpayers. It's just, the parking fund. And if you don't have parking fund revenues, then, we purposely did that, unlike some other cities, to insulate taxpayers. The park is being paid for by the DDA. And, the police station, nobody disagrees that our police officers deserve a functional building, given the fact that we're moving down a path of new, modern, socialized policing. And City Hall might be the only thing. And that was many, many experts and unanimous votes. We determined that this was a better, return on investment for our community. And at the end of the day, that payment, that bond payment, the mortgage payment on our city's house is less than 1% of our revenue, which would be someone we're making 50 grand a year. It'd be like having a mortgage payment for your house of $50 a month. So we're not talking, crazy stuff here. And this has all been well vetted and well discussed, and it's all in the past. We need to focus on is a 2021 budget and the things that we can change when we need to change them when we have more information in August, which we agreed upon. So right now we have a conservative plan moving forward. It's what we've done. It's helped us build a fund balance over the years, unlike all of our fellow neighbors and other communities in Michigan. It's why we have a rainy day fund, and we're going to continue that process right now and get a check and an update here every meeting, but in August in particular, I think is our bogey date to hopefully have more information from the state. So I'm going to call for the vote. We'll start with Commissioner Gibbs.
No.
I vote yes. Commissioner LeVasseur?
No.
Commissioner Perush?
Yes.
Commissioner Macy?
Yes.
Commissioner Douglas?
Yes.
Commissioner Dubuck?
Yes.
And I believe I got everybody. Right as I was doing that, the screen juggled a little bit and positions moved away. Okay, so we've passed resolution 1. We've done the fiscally responsible thing by passing a budget to operate this year. And Mr. Brake, we look forward to some of your ideas and some of your work ahead of us with the help of the rest of the staff, and hopefully some more information for you to digest from the state come August, September timeframe. All right, that brings us to resolution 2, set tax rates. Commissioner Perush.
I'll move approval of resolution 2, setting the tax rates, indicating that every single tax rate that we're going to be issuing this year is lower than the one last year.
Commissioner Perush with a second by Commissioner Douglas. Discussion? Commissioner LeVasseur.
I'm going to support this motion, but just so the public is very clear here, because politicians won't always be straight with you. They'll claim credit for a tax cut or millage reduction. For the most part, I think there's 1 or 2 minor exceptions here. These are all matter of constitution. The state constitution mandates that we reduce the millages here. But I will support the resolution.
And I'll also add to that, it's constitutional, but it's a manifestation of all the decisions we've made as a commission over the years to grow property values and increase the quality of life here in the city, which creates a situation where we have a Headley override. That's a really good position to be in. It means that people's property values are up, their tax rates are going down, and we're working and eking our way to fund quality of life and city operations. So this is a good news story in every regard. Some cities unfortunately don't have that ability because their property values continue to drop and they continue to spiral and really, can't support the services that their citizens demand. So I think good job on our staff over the years and all the commissions up to today. So, all right. Any other discussion on the tax rates? All right, I'll call for the vote. We'll start with Commissioner Dubuck.
Yes.
Commissioner Douglas.
Yes.
Commissioner Macy.
Yes.
Commissioner Perush.
Yes.
Commissioner LeVasseur.
Yes.
I vote yes. Commissioner Gibbs.
Yes.
Okay, we've established tax rates. All right, we're moving. We'll go to resolution 3, authorized tax administration fee. Commissioner Douglas.
Yes, I'll move approval, Mayor.
Motion by Commissioner Douglas, second by Commissioner Macy. Discussion. All right, with no discussion, I'll call for the vote. Commissioner Gibbs. Commissioner Gibbs.
Yes.
I vote yes. Commissioner LeVasseur.
Yes.
Commissioner Perush.
Yes.
Commissioner Macy.
Yes.
Commissioner Douglas.
Yes.
Commissioner Dubuck.
Yes.
Okay. The authorized tax administration fee resolution is passed unanimously. Resolution 5, purchases.
Mr. Mayor, did you miss resolution 4?
Did I miss resolution 4? You know what? I might have missed. Yep, I did. Water and sewage disposal rates. We're on resolution 4. Commissioner Perush.
I'll move approval of resolution 4.
Second. Second by Commissioner Macy. Discussion? I don't see any discussion, so we'll start with Commissioner Dubak.
Yes.
Commissioner Douglas.
Yes.
Commissioner Macy.
Yes.
Commissioner Perush.
Yes.
Commissioner LeVasseur.
Yes.
I vote yes. Commissioner Gibbs. Commissioner Gibbs.
Yes.
Okay, Commissioner Gibbs votes yes. Okay, this brings us to Resolution 5, purchases. Commissioner Perush.
I'll move approval of resolution 5.
A motion by Commissioner Perush. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Douglas. Discussion. I don't see any discussion. Okay, Commissioner Gibbs.
Yes.
I vote yes. Commissioner LeVasseur.
Yes.
Commissioner Perush.
Yes.
Mr. Macy.
Yes.
Mr. Douglas.
Yes.
Commissioner Dubak.
Yes.
Okay, Resolution 5 passes. Resolution 6, purchasing. Commissioner Douglas.
Move approval of resolution 6.
We have a move by Commissioner Douglas, seconded by Commissioner Perush. Discussion. Commissioner Macy.
So you didn't let me ask my question earlier, so I'm just going to go ahead and ask it now. I just wanted to ask Commissioner LeVasseur, because he was talking about this issue of the purchasing and the amount. So today it was 4,300, I believe. So does Commissioner LeVasseur not approve of this resolution at all? Does he think that any dollar amount should come in front of the commission? That's what I was just trying to get clarification on that. I get the overall point that if it's over 10,000, it needs to come in front of us. I'm just asking about that particular issue.
Should I respond?
You choose to, Commissioner LeVasseur.
I'll respond, and I'm going to support this resolution, although I have concerns with it. You may recall at a previous meeting, I suggested that we put the word prior in front of the number 10,500, and it was suggested later on that perhaps this is very precise language that's required by our charter, and that putting the word prior in there may not be prudent. That said, I do think that if we don't consider prior approval to be required, it basically renders the resolution to be utter nonsense. I mean, what good does it do to require approval if staff can basically simply say, hey, we've already done it. I just need you to rubber stamp it after the fact. That's not approval. That's simply acquiescence to the issue. Whether the number's 10,500 or 4,000 or whatever, that's something that we could have a discussion about. But my concern has to do more with the manner that these expenses are going through rather than that specific number.
Mr. Macy.
So I got it, and point made, but I'm just clarifying because I think you voted against today the 4,000 based on this principle, and I just I'm just wondering if this is going to be an issue for every purchase order that you're expecting staff to come forward, even if it's less than 10,000.
Commissioner LeVasseur, you're not required to answer the question, but if you wish to, I'll allow you to.
I think it has to do with the nature of the situation. If staff were to come to us and say, hey, look, we had to spend an extra $2,000 on this project. It was something of urgent necessity. We didn't bother to bring it to you because we felt the need to go forward with it. I'd say fine and dandy. That makes perfect sense. But something that staff believes needs our attention but doesn't have that type of time sensitivity, and they simply come to us after the fact, ask us to acquiesce to it. I have concerns with that way of operating. I don't think it's appropriate.
Commissioner Douglas?
Yeah, in fact, I think Commissioner LeVasseur said a few moments ago that many of these decisions, I mean, we are policymakers and we have staff members who implement our policies. And here we are approving a policy that says we trust them to make financial decisions under a certain amount. And this resolution was established many years ago because city commissioners were micromanaging staff and had to set a threshold of how much they could approve without commission authorization. And I just want to point out that we have this resolution in place. The city is in control of amounts that we have determined to be of a policy nature. I think this is a wise resolution, and I obviously made the motion and I'm going to support it.
Anybody else? Yeah, and I'll just add, not to say our staff is always 100% perfect, but time and time again, we've made approvals on our end. And sometimes you don't know what the final cost of the work is until it's done. You have estimates or whatever, and they have to come in after the work and say, okay, we estimated it was $50,000. You guys approved it, and it came in at $46,250. I need you to approve this now for the scope of work. And we've done that on regular occasions where we do give authorization to commence the work or to acquire the asset, and then afterwards we approve the amount. And you know, so I think that staff works within the best they can for the fact that we meet every 2 to 4 weeks. And actually, sometimes you can't know the final expense until the work is done. I mean, that's clear. Anyone who's been in business or has operated a business understands that, you know, professional services, especially, you don't know until, you know, the work is done. But you have covenants and contracts that we approve. So, all right, I'll call for the vote. Commissioner Gibbs. Commissioner Gibbs.
Yes.
I vote yes. Commissioner LeVasseur.
Yes.
Commissioner Perush.
Yes.
Commissioner Macy.
Yes.
Commissioner Douglas.
Yes.
Commissioner Dubuck.
Yes.
All right. Resolution 6, purchasing, is approved unanimously. Resolution 7, transfers. Commissioner Perush.
I'll move approval of resolution 7.
Motion to move 7. We have a second by Commissioner Macy. Discussion? Don't see any discussion, so we'll start the voting with Commissioner Dubuck.
Yes.
Commissioner Douglas.
Yes.
Commissioner Macy.
Yes.
Commissioner Perush.
Yes.
Commissioner LeVasseur.
Yes.
I vote yes. Commissioner Gibbs.
Yes.
Okay. All right. That brings us to resolution 8, PEG fees. Commissioner Perush.
I'll move approval of this resolution.
Motion by Commissioner Perush. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Douglas. Discussion on PEG fees. Okay, I don't see any, so we'll start. Commissioner Gibbs?
Yes.
Yes, I vote yes. Commissioner LeVasseur?
Yes.
Commissioner Perush?
Yes.
Commissioner Macy?
Yes.
Commissioner Douglas?
Yes.
Commissioner Dubuck?
Yes.
Okay. Resolution 8 passes unanimously. Resolution 9, financial policies. Commissioner Perush.
I'll move approval of this resolution.
Motion by Commissioner Perush. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Dubuck. Discussion? Okay, we'll start the vote. Commissioner Dubuck?
Yes.
Commissioner Douglas?
Yes.
Commissioner Macy?
Yes.
Commissioner Perush?
Yes.
LeVasseur?
Yes.
I vote yes. Commissioner Gibbs?
Yes.
Okay, resolution 9 passes. All 9 resolutions. All right, Ms. Rudd, Mr. Brake, what can we expect next?
Well, the first step is to implement the budget. But Mayor, going back to your comments early on, this is a living document. So our plan is to monitor the expenses and as it becomes necessary, but defer to the expertise of Ms. Rudd. That likely that we will be bringing back budget amendments in August. And if nothing else, touching base and to say, this is where we're at and this is where we anticipate. But I think until such time when we have better information from the state, it's projections at this point. And as that information comes in, keeping the commission informed.
Thank you, Mr. Brake. All right. At this brings us down to item 12 on tonight's agenda, which is a public hearing on substantial amendments to program years 16-20 Consolidated Plan and 2019 Action Plan and Citizen Participation Plan to allocate coronavirus aid, relief, and economic security funding. I'll just double check, Mr. Gillum, just like the hearing before, we're covered with the remote call-in public comment. Everything was posted and in the clear.
That's correct. Notice was published and directed anyone who wanted to comment to the agenda for tonight's meeting, which was also itself posted, which had information regarding call-in to offer the public comment. So yes, we have satisfied the legal requirements for the public hearing.
Okay, all right. So I imagine, I don't know who wants to kick this off, Mr. Brake or Mr. Twing?
Actually, Mayor, members of the commission, Mr. Murphy is again here this evening. He has spent a great deal of time on this CARES Act funding and program, and that's the purpose of the substantial amendment to deal with that. So I've asked him to participate and give you a brief overview of item 12, and that will roll right into 13 as well.
Thank you, Mr. Twing. Mr. Murphy, I see you down there now.
Good evening. The city's Community Development Block Grant, or CDBG program, the consolidated plan, covers a 5-year period, and it identifies the city's needs, resources, and priorities for housing and community development needs, resources, and priorities. Each year, the annual action plan identifies how the city is going to select particular activities and fund activities to address the needs in the consolidated plan, that 5-year plan. The immediate effects of COVID-19 have obviously created new needs within our community, and therefore we need to amend the consolidated plan and subsequently the annual action plan in order for the city to direct its special allocation of CDBG funds from the CARES Act to eligible activities. Obviously, public involvement is a critical role in identifying the needs within the city. The city's citizen participation plan identifies how we'll achieve that, along with how the public will be able to access different documents related to the Community Development Block Grant program. HUD does require, or the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD does require that we amend our citizen participation plan to address how we're going to solicit public comment in lieu of in-person meetings, or the virtual meeting that we're having today, as well as how we're going to utilize their reduced public time or public comment period that they're allowing for communities. And that is to allow for communities to be able to put those funds in motion and to expend those funds as quick as possible and address the needs created by COVID-19. As you had indicated, there was no public comment provided earlier this evening with regard to the public hearing. It was noticed in the Daily Tribune, and there is a suggested motion, but as you can see in the suggested motion with regard to the annual action plan, we had left the dollar amounts associated with several of the activities blank. The City Commission at your May 18th meeting, you had discussed with staff the possibility of funding several different activities, one being providing emergency food distribution, free food, hotel vouchers in lieu of, for homeless individuals in lieu of them staying in a shelter, a rental, a mortgage, or utility assistance program, a small business assistance program. As Mr. Twing had noted, the next agenda item is relevant to this agenda item in the fact that this agenda item sets the dollar amounts that you would like to allocate to those activities or other activities that you so choose now. And that will lead us into the next agenda item as to entering into contract with various social service or public service agencies, nonprofit groups, to help implement many of those programs for us or on behalf of the city. So with that, I would like to see if the commission has any questions with regard to the proposed amendments that are included to, again, the citizen participation plan, the consolidated plan or the 5-year plan, and then the annual action plan for this program year.
Any questions from Mr. Murphy? Okay, I see Commissioner Macy.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Murphy. I was just trying to figure out how these two agenda items went together. The 702,000 that's talked about in item 13, that's that will be, those numbers will be distributed among the red hashtags in item 12. Is that the idea?
Correct.
Okay, and are we now jumping to talk about item 13? We're talking about them all together, is that right?
It would be, I think it would be relevant to at least discuss it, and it plays a role in determining how much you want to allocate to particular line items in the budget. Once we get to the next item formally, then we can determine, the city commission can determine which public service agencies or nonprofit groups you would like to enter into contract with, and the dollar amounts associated with those contracts.
Okay, it seems relevant. Sorry.
It would be wise to determine the total dollar amounts for each of the eligible activities.
Right.
Okay, right. It seems like we have to do that. Otherwise, we'll come to the next agenda item and realize that the requests don't match up with how we distributed it. So that's my only question.
We have a fill in the blank resolution here, correct, Mr. Murphy, with the highlighted yellow amounts?
Correct. And if you'd like, I can go through the suggested, the action that was taken at the May 18th meeting to suggest particular activities and percentages. The City Commission had passed a resolution proposing to allocate 30% of the dollar amount to be distributed amongst emergency food distribution, hotel vouchers for the homeless, or a rent, mortgage, or utility assistance program. There was the caveat put in place that no less than $210,732, or 50% of that total, be allocated to emergency food. $105,367 be distributed for emergency food, and 60% for small business assistance program. The staff did send out an application to local nonprofit organizations to see if they would be interested in assisting the city to implement those public service activities. You'll see in the next agenda item the responses from the nonprofit groups. Their total dollar amount of the 4 nonprofits that had responded, the total dollar amount equals 52% of the total CARES Act funds. The City Commission again had set aside initially 30%. So if the commission does want to fund all of the requests, all of the applications that we had received, it would call for a reduction in the dollar amount associated with the small business assistance program. The commission has the ability to do as you so choose.
The good news is, Mr. Murphy, is we have the demand for the proposed supply that we had talked about the last time we talked about this, and we can choose among those vendors to equal the 210, or I'm sorry, minimum 105 for food, 210,000 of the 30, equaling the 30%, correct?
Yes, I will say that there was one activity that no nonprofit responded to, and that was a mortgage assistance program. Okay. None of the nonprofit agencies responded to wanting to assist the city in that effort.
Commissioner Macy, and then Commissioner Douglas.
That actually reminded me of a question I had looking at this. So there was rent utility was separate from mortgage utilities assistance, and we did have several who asked for funds for rent utility assistance. Would the utility assistance not be available to people who have homes? Is it just for people who are renting? I wasn't clear about that.
No, it could be associated with someone who has arrears, whether they're a renter or a homeowner, if you so choose. Typically, someone who doesn't have who is facing eviction from, if they're not paying their monthly lease, they would certainly be eligible under this program. The utility, if someone is at imminent risk, there would be no distinction between whether they were a renter or a homeowner. No.
Okay, great. And then one more question about the small business. So it looks like you created an application for that because the city will administer itself the small business loans. And I know we had talked a little bit before about what the perceived demand was. I wonder if you have any update on that. I think you had said that this would be only for businesses that didn't qualify for any other federal funds. Do we have a sense at all what that number is?
Unfortunately, I don't. It will also be for businesses that are currently not, or when they receive our assistance, that they have not, or rather they are not at that time receiving any other federal assistance, meaning through the program for Oakland County, they're getting their funds from the federal government, or through the small business assistance payroll protection program, plan, or any of those other federal activities. They could be utilizing those funds now, but once they receive our funds, they won't be able to have what's referred to as a duplication of benefits. There's some strict federal regulations which prohibit that. So an applicant would have to attest to the fact and sign in their agreement with the city that they are not having a duplication of benefits from the federal government.
Commissioner Douglas?
Continuing in our discussion about small business, the DDA has provided loans and grants to businesses in the downtown district. Do you have, and I know this is like maybe wild speculation or maybe not, but do you have a sense of what the average grant was to a downtown business?
I do know that there is a master spreadsheet. I don't have that immediately in front of me.
Commissioner?
Yes.
Commissioner Douglas, the range was, the low was $4,000 and the high was 32.
So theoretically, I'm like doing quick back of the envelope math. I mean, if we gave if our average grant was $15,000, we could help 14, I'm assuming non-DDA businesses. If we were to allocate the amount that we see in the document here, reflecting 37.8% of the total as opposed to the 60% that we had talked about.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Prush.
I was very impressed with the responses from the agencies who responded to the ask, would you be willing to assist with this? Open Hands Food Pantry, South Oakland Shelter, Legal Aid and Defenders Association, and the Community Foundation of Greater Rochester, which is the agency that administers the Blessings in a Backpack program, which is providing food for qualified students for food over the weekends. All of those agencies have tremendous track records and very highly regarded in the community, including of the greater Metro Detroit area, not just in Royal Oak, for being able to provide the kinds of assistance that we have been looking for in terms of this particular program. So even though funding all of their requests bumps down to the amount that is available for small business assistance, I think given the fact that there are other small business assistance programs out there, both federal and the DDA and the county, and seeing how thoughtfully these agencies spelled out the needs and very specifically came to a dollar amount that they thought would be useful and that they would be able to distribute in the community in the best possible way. I'm very comfortable with using the reduced amount for small business assistance and funding all of these requests from all of these agencies and bumping up our 30% percentage, which we initially established, which we just kind of pulled out of the air, to the amount that it comes out to, which is the 50-some% of the $700,000, given the social service needs that I think we're seeing in the community.
The motion, Commissioner Perush, or?
Yeah, okay, yes.
Okay. So and then we have a second by Commissioner Dubuck. So the motion is to move forward with the resolution, but for the blanks to basically allocate 37.8% to the categories of, my computer's running really slow here, food assistance, hotel vouchers, rent, utility assistance, and things of that nature, or what we have basically here. And then the balance would go to assist small business.
And I don't know whether you want to include in that resolution the part where the individual amounts are allocated to the individual agencies, which is the first part of the motion.
I think that would be item 13. That'd be our next item.
Okay.
Yeah, we would award that. It's a great question. I think that the next agenda item, we would actually award those services the exact amounts, and that would add up to what we put into this motion.
Okay.
Any discussion? Commissioner Macy?
I'm very pleased with this motion. I think this is going to get the greatest assistance to the people who have the greatest need.
Commissioner Douglas?
Yes, of course, I agree. Part and parcel of this motion is the entire citizen participation plan for the block grant program. And I skimmed through this, but it's the sort of thing that I think you have to trust staff on this. They're the ones who know the ins and outs of notification and public participation in this process. So I'm just pointing out that in addition to approving the spending percentages or amounts for various purposes, we're also approving this revised community contact plan.
Right. Anybody else? All right. Well, I think our estimate wasn't too far off when we looked at the responses. I mean, it's kind of just a quick check in the air, and we came back at 37.8 versus 30, which I think is good. And I didn't want to use part and parcel twice, but we look at getting people the help that they need, whether it's mortgage assistance or food assistance. To some extent, that keeps the customers and employees of our small businesses healthy and functioning. Which, in the long run plays dividends for the whole economic fabric of our country. So, and as well as here in Royal Oak. So all of this is helping, hopefully everybody collectively. We're just breaking it out so we can target it and get the most use, the highest and best use out of these dollars that we've received. So I'll call, Commissioner Macy.
I just want to clarify, Mayor, you said 37.8, it's 52.2% is now going to be going towards the social services.
That's right, 52.2, right, the 37.8 was before. Yeah, 52.2, you're right. Okay, I'll start with Commissioner Gibbs.
Yes.
I vote yes. Commissioner LeVasseur?
Yes.
Commissioner Perush?
Yes.
Mr. Macy?
Yes.
Mr. Douglas?
Yes.
Mr. Dubuck?
Yes.
All right, we got some funding to help some people. Thank you, Mr. Murphy, on this one. Thank you for setting it up the way you did as well. You could have taken another path, but you chose to disclose and present a different type of idea based on our previous discussion. So we're very grateful for, creating that opportunity for us to make an adjustment. That brings us to 13, where Commissioner Perush, we were talking about the award of the service agreements.
Is this the part where we go to the resolution and allocating specifically the dollar amounts to the individual, which is the first part of the resolution on page 2 of the memorandum?
Yes, it would be. Yes, it would be.
Okay. All right, then I will move that out of the $700,000, we allocate $18,500 to Open Heads Food Pantry for emergency food distribution. To the South Oakland Shelter, $133,582 for emergency food distribution. $27,150 for hotel vouchers for the homeless, and $50,000 for rent utility assistance. To the Legal Aid and Defender Association, $132,000 for rent utility assistance. And the Community Foundation of Greater Rochester, the Blessings in a Backpack Program, $5,702.
All right, we have a motion. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Dubuck. Discussion. All right, I'll call for the vote. We'll say Commissioner Dubuck.
Yes.
Commissioner Douglas.
Yes.
Mr. Macy.
Yes.
Mr. Prush.
Yes.
LeVasseur.
Yes.
I vote yes.
What about me?
I just said Commissioner Gibbs.
I didn't hear you. Yes.
Okay. All right, so the resolution passes unanimously. Commissioner Prush.
And I think there's one other small resolution that goes along with that, and that's the allocation of dollars to the Small Business Assistance Program. And I would move that we allocate 37.8% of the money, or $265,523 to the Small Business Assistance Program.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Prush. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Dubuck. Discussion. Commissioner Macy.
Where did she get that number?
The top of page 2.
Oh, I see it. Okay. So we still have our administration fee set aside.
Yeah, 70.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, I'll call for the vote. I'll start with the top of my screen. Commissioner Gibbs.
Yes.
I vote yes. Commissioner LeVasseur.
Yes.
Commissioner Prush.
Yes.
Mr. Macy.
Yes.
Commissioner Douglas.
Yes.
Commissioner Dubuck.
Yes.
All right, the motion passes. Very good. Well, Mr. Murphy, Mr. Twing, good work. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
All right, this brings us to item 14, which is the Recreation Department 2020 Summer Virtual Programming Recommendations. I see Mr. Fideli is on board and Mr. Filipski. So,
yep.
Mr. Fideli.
Honorable Mayor Fournier and members of the City Commission, at the May 18th, 2020 City Commission meeting, the City Commission approved the Recreation Department's proposed tiered system for its recreation programs and instructed staff to find ways to provide virtual programming to our residents. Staff has reached out to its instructors that run our normal summer programs and have put together a list of virtual classes to include a cooking class by our own Chef Aaron in Tim's Kitchen, Tai Chi, Pilates, and variable youth classes as hip hop, Zumba, and an all sports camp that you see on his attachment 1. Staff determined our virtual programming will be an 8-week program beginning July 6th through August 24th. Registration will begin the week of June 8th, and staff will also work to try and provide a virtual art fair to replace the 50th annual outdoor art fair. Classes will be marketed through a Facebook and email campaign, as well as in our Senior Times monthly newsletter and website. Classes will be offered through a variety of different platforms, which may include Facebook Live and pre-recorded video sessions in Zoom. The registration fee will vary depending on the class, and the Recreation Department will also provide resources for its residents through the state and local websites throughout the summer that offer various programs as well. The following resolution is recommended for adoption. The City Commission approves the Recreation Department's recommendation for virtual programming for the 2020 summer season.
Thank you, Mr. Fideli. We have questions for Mr. Fideli. Commissioner Macy.
I'll move approval.
The motion by Commissioner Macy. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Dubuck. Discussion. Commissioner Macy.
I just want to thank our Mr. Fideli and Mr. Filipski for working hard on this and bringing it back in pretty short order and being creative as is required by these strange times. I think this is a great start. I'm really excited to get this going. And I was really pleased by all of the things that are actually available already through some other online things, as Mr. Fidelli just said, that they're going to be publicizing that will give an even wider range of opportunities to our residents. I think this is much more than I expected from this summer, so I'm pleased.
And I imagine, Mr. Fidelli, the cameras don't always work both ways. So if some of us decide to sign into the Tai Chi, we can't be embarrassed across the big broadcast.
Correct. Yep. You have the option to not have your video up. But I will add that I want to thank our staff. We have great staff that, you know, put together all this and worked really hard on getting this up in short notice and providing all these classes for our residents. So I just want to thank our staff for that.
Yeah, and they seem very relevant to the target that we were looking at, and they also seem relevant to you know, things that you're just not always going to find out there, you know, on your whatever, you know, download off the internet type thing. So these are all legitimate, approved, you know, city sanctioned with trainers and folks that are professionals at what they do, teaching these classes. And so rest assured, people have access. Even if you don't have internet access, like you said, some of them may be played on WROK, all that stuff. So are pre-recorded. So there's a lot of opportunity here. So we're very grateful. Commissioner Dubuck, you had your hand up.
Thank you, Mary. I seconded the motion. I second Commissioner Macy's comments. Thanks to staff for being innovative and making sure that we're still providing opportunities for folks to get social interaction and get exercise while being safe in the strange situation that we're in. Thanks for all the work on this, guys.
Yeah, thank you for stepping up.
Thank you.
All right, I'll call for the vote. We'll start with Commissioner Gibbs.
Yes.
I vote yes. Commissioner LeVasseur?
Yes.
Commissioner Prush?
Yes.
Mr. Macy?
Yes.
Mr. Douglas?
Yes.
Mr. Dubuck?
Yes.
All right, the motion passes. All right, this brings us to item 15, approval of special event permit, Save One CPR Dog Aid, not Dog 8 Bark Bash, Dog Aid Bark Bash. This is Chief O'Donoghue.
Yes, Mayor, City Commission. I found out about an hour ago that the applicants want to withdraw their request for alcohol. So with that in mind, this will be the exact same event it's been in years past, and without the use of alcohol in the city park, this doesn't need City Commission approval. So sorry for it on the agenda, but we just found that out. I believe next year they're going to want to add alcohol, and so they'll probably be back before you then.
Okay. So do we just, maybe a matter of order, Mr. Gillum, do we just, you know, move to approve it without that, or do we just, can we just move on? What would be the best way to proceed?
You could do either one. Without the addition of the alcohol, the event could be approved administratively as long as you've got it on the agenda. If you want to approve the event without the alcohol as a formality, you can also do that. Either way.
Pleasure of the commission. Whatever you guys want to do, I support 100%. Just move on. Okay,
I'm happy to leave it be at the discretion of the chief.
Yeah. Okay. Commissioner Douglas has her hand up though.
Well, I guess just to deal with it formally, I would like to make a motion that we amend the agenda to remove item, whatever number this is, from the agenda.
Motion by Commissioner Douglas. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Prush. Discussion? All right, with that, I'll call for the vote. Commissioner Dubuck?
Yes.
Commissioner Douglas?
Yes.
Commissioner Macy?
Yes.
Commissioner Prush?
Yes.
Commissioner LeVasseur?
Yes.
I vote yes. Commissioner Gibbs?
Yes.
Okay, it's been removed from the agenda. Thank you, Chief O'Donoghue. Item 16, approval of COVID-19 temporary use permits.
Mayor, I'll start with this. There were several departments involved in the discussion and review of this particular item. The police department, engineering, legal. The intent of this resolution is a follow-up to a recommendation from the DDA that the City Commission passed in regards to waiving sidewalk cafes fees in the downtown area. It had a second part to that resolution where the City Commission directed staff to look at guidelines that we could do to assist with social distancing in the downtown. So the follow-up to that with staff's discussion is the resolution that's attached to the commission letter. The intent of it is to allow any restaurant, retail, or service establishment to apply what we've termed as COVID-19 temporary use permit, meaning that the applicant would be a temporary if it's approved. It would not be a renewal activity type activity. The resolution has that ending date as being October 31st of 2020. Staff picked that date simply because that's when the sidewalk cafe outdoor service license agreements also end. Obviously, there is a provision in the resolution that would allow staff to revoke any of these permits if they became an issue. The police department would also be able to order them to cease and desist if there was an emergency issue. The specific language does not limit these requests to the central business district or the downtown. The intent would be to allow, by example, a business that's in Woodward Corners to submit a request for a temporary use permit that would allow them to expand their outdoor seating area or outdoor display area or other activity that may come forth to assist with social distancing. We have gotten requests from fitness, yoga, and some of the other types of service establishments that, and even including hair salons that would like to put some temporary waiting service areas outside. So I'm not sure where the requests are going to come from, and that's partly why we, as staff, try to leave it as open to where any of those three types of businesses could apply for a permit. I won't go through the resolution in its totality. The one part I would point out in the central business district, if someone were to propose using on-street parking, we've suggested that be limited to streets that have a speed limit of not more than 25 miles an hour. And that's basically all the streets in the CBD. And an average daily traffic, annual daily traffic of under 10,000 vehicles. That would eliminate Main Street from consideration for placing a request in the on-street parking along Main Street. The resolution would not impact anybody that has a current sidewalk cafe and all they want to do is open it, or an outdoor service area. They could simply, again, submit the application, the insurance, and sign the agreement. The fees were waived previously by the commission, but we're still looking to get the paperwork in so that we have the appropriate insurance coverage. And that would be true under this resolution. If someone proposed to use public property or the public right-of-way, again, they would have to have some sort of hold harmless agreement or insurance coverage and insurance coverage. If it's on private property, someone wants to propose using a parking lot or vacant space that they have, they would not need to have the license agreement or insurance naming the city. If they wanted to use a parking spot, we are proposing a limitation of the area being equivalent to what they're taking out of inside the establishment. Meaning if they took out, if the establishment had seating for 50 and they had to take 25 out, the maximum area that we would consider outside would be sufficient to handle the 25 chairs, similar like that. There are some submission requirements in the resolution. Obviously, we would want a narrative of the use and the proposal. We'd want a detailed enough plan that had dimensions and that would identify what they're placing, particularly in the right of way, but also on private property, number of chairs, the spacing. If there's a railing, they have to have a railing around any establishment with a liquor license, and we would want a railing around any that would be out in the right of way. So some basics there. The intent is not to ask that they submit a sealed drawing by an architect or an engineer. If they're poor sketches, I think staff's intent would be to try to provide them with the drawings we have for sites and or the right of way to get them to use those as a base so that we could move this along. The intent is that if the commission passes this, we would deal with these administratively. They would not come to the city commission for action. We would either approve them or deny them on the staff level. Obviously, they would have the ability to appeal that to the city commission, but that's going to delay until they can get on the future city commission meeting to appeal it. There's also a provision, as I said, about being potentially revoked prior to October 31st. The way the resolution is set up is that would be a staff recommendation to the city manager, and it would be the city manager's, Mr. Brake's call on whether it's revoked or not. There's also the cease and desist order provision to allow the police department to deal with any sorts of emergency situations or things that are unsafe at the time. So I'm going to stop there. If there's questions, I will also point out the resolution does have some specifically prohibited items listed on the last part that we're suggesting you not allow to occur.
I see Commissioner Perush, then Commissioner Douglas.
Just from a logistical standpoint, say on Washington Avenue, which would be eligible for this program, there are 5 businesses on one side of this street that already have sidewalk cafes, and only 3 of them decide to expand into the parking areas. Does that mean that the parking areas in front of the other businesses, which might be immediately adjacent to the ones that are going to be using the parking spaces, are going to remain open for parking? Or are you going to block off the entire parking area as soon as you start to get some applications for extensions into the parking spaces, so that you don't have cars pulling in and pulling out next to people who might be dining on either sides, which to me would be a safety issue. So that's my preliminary question is how would that work in that situation?
Well, obviously each case is going to be taken on its own merits. If there's a safety concern, we would obviously want it addressed. I don't think I would say that we're automatically going to take all of the spaces away on the entire block.
Okay.
The way the resolution is set up is if one business wants to expand in front of another business, we would ask them to get a sign off from that adjacent business. That's pretty common practice for sidewalk cafes in general in the community. So if one business wanted to use space and then one next door didn't care, and we would expand it out from there. And I would think we'd want to at least keep a couple of the on-street spots open so that for carry out and or delivery pickups and that sort of thing. So I don't think there would be a situation where we might take them all off in a particular block unless there was a business that was the only one on the block and they didn't want carry out or something, but we would get that as part of their narrative. I think it's difficult to answer every scenario that might come forth. Obviously, safety is going to be a concern that staff looks at. And then part of that would also be what do they use to fence or secure it around it? What type of railing are they proposing? And I've heard a variety of different things from parties that are already interested, anything from flower box type containers that are pretty solid and sturdy to, simple railings.
So this is just going to be an ongoing, let's see what comes in and let's go with the flow and let's deal with each situation individually and see how it goes. My sense is that if that's the case, that you might have to come back to us to have it tweaked a little bit. But on the other hand, the resolution is pretty broad. So we're giving you pretty broad discretion to do what you think is best in terms of each individual situation. But I can see it as an evolving thing. The second point I want to make is just to point out that I know in the dialogue here in the memorandum, you mentioned that because of the high traffic volume on Main Street, it's not really a good candidate for this type of activity. There are a significant number of restaurants on Main Street on both sides that are not going to be able to take advantage of this. And I also recall that in our budget, originally, before we took it out, there was Main Street paving this year, or repaving this year, which was going to be a significant disruption and reduction in traffic ability on Main Street during the reconstruction process. So my sense is that having some reduction in traffic and a little bit more congestion is not necessarily as bad a thing as we might anticipate, especially since we've axed the Main Street reconstruction project out of the budget, which would have been a significant disruption and a significant impact on congestion. I'll just throw that out.
I mean, I'll just echo that point a little bit. I had Commissioner Dubuck, but I just wanted to echo that point on Main Street. I mean, I get it out of the gate, but I also think too that, we've had instances where we've had railroad repairs and some other things going on with Maine, and we've diverted people. And you get a couple people that complain, but a vast majority of those 10,000 cars aren't people looking for places to eat and dine in Royal Oak. They're using it as a cut through as opposed to using Woodward or Stevenson or Campbell, to get to Clawson and Troy. And frankly speaking, I love my neighbors in Clawson and Troy and to the north, but quite frankly, it's not their downtown. It's not their community. And I think that we got to look at it a little bit outside the usual context and look at it maybe more in the context of it's okay. We put signs up that say, caution, slow traffic, take Woodward. That's okay with me. And yeah, there's going to be inconveniences with some of the traffic when we do this. But the reality is nothing is more inconvenient than losing our precious businesses in our downtown. So just a thought there. Commissioner Dubuck. And then Commissioner Douglas. Commissioner Dubuck, can you unmute?
Did you want to hear me?
No, but I think there's probably one person out there that does.
Hopefully. All right. So yeah, I would say this is about supporting our businesses in our downtown, but it's also about ensuring that residents can get out and do so safely by providing them the space needed to be out and be social distant. So it works on both. It's supportive of business and supportive of our residents. Trying to live a lifestyle in the midst of battling this pandemic. My instinct is, Mr. Twing, that traffic volumes on Main would be down right now. Would that not be accurate?
I would believe they're down right now. When things open back up, I think it's anyone's guess how soon they get back up to the average daily traffic count.
But I think one kind of leads to the other, right? If there's not space for people to be downtown, then the volumes of people visiting downtown will be significantly reduced. So volumes would still be lower. I think there's a reason to try and be more innovative and push boundaries on this by utilizing that street space. I think we should be considering not just allowing the usage of the parking spaces on Main, but have you explored road closures, temporary road closures, certain days of the week, certain hours of the week, where my understanding is there's a concern that if we expand the patios, but people are still utilizing the sidewalk, we have bottlenecks where people are walking through. And so people aren't going to be able to properly distance. There'll be too much density, even if crowds are limited in our city. I'm wondering how much you thought you put into that.
Well, one of the items in the resolution does indicate that the city would consider closing streets and other public rights of way, potentially an alley. I believe it was the staff's position was to let the business owners make that request because we get mixed feelings when the city has simply closed streets in the past as whether that's beneficial to their operation and their customers. So again, this was written kind of thinking for the idea of what the business owners would want in order to make that better. We really didn't look at it in the sense of closing the street just to make more space for anyone that might come downtown. So under this, we would allow the business owners to approach the city and request that a certain block of the street be closed and let them identify which days of the week and hours of the day and either reply back to that in a positive fashion or a negative fashion or ask for modifications.
That's a reasonable approach to let it come organically from them, but as long as it's known that it's definitely something we're willing to consider. But I would definitely like to see this expanded to businesses on Main Street.
If that's the commission's desire, the only item I would suggest you revise would be the paragraph 10 and simply take out the limitation on 10,000 average vehicle dailies a day.
Commissioner Douglas?
Thank you, Mayor. I want to congratulate the staff for coming up with a plan that is super flexible. They know we need to respond to the needs of business, and the business people are going to know what they want. And this plan, without requiring fees from businesses to apply, without requiring fees for sidewalk use or parking space use, is really going to address the needs of the entrepreneurs in our community as they struggle to survive and thrive. I do want to return to the question of Main Street or streets with traffic levels of 10,000 or more. The staff memo says is concerned that closing one lane in each direction could incur additional overtime costs for the city's Department of Public Service crews. And so, I mean, I want to be sensitive to the budgets and our staffing levels. Can you tell us more about what that narrowing would cost us in terms of manpower or other costs?
Well, I don't have a specific number. I don't know whether Aaron could provide an estimate of what it would take. Again, my feeling from a staff standpoint is if we allow it to be to the business owner's request, as long as what they were proposing met our safety design standards, that could be their cost and not necessarily something that DPS staff would have to come out and put up barricades. They may still have to come out and put up traffic control signage to let people know upstream that the road's narrowing and that sort of thing. But the actual barricades may be left to the expense of the business owners, unless the commission wanted DPS personnel to come down with some road barricades of some sort. And that obviously would take the cost up. But I don't know if Aaron has any idea or not of what it would cost his staff to.
Dumb question, Mr. Swing, on Commissioner Douglas, just real quick, I don't want to forget. Could we pay for some of that if it was a nominal cost out of the CBDG funding for small business assistance that we just approved?
Well, I don't know how we would do that unless the business itself had applied. And I think the commission's directive was not to have the businesses in the CBD be eligible to apply, those that got DDA funding. So I think it may be that the DDA would pick up some of those costs for the businesses.
Yeah, to me, it seems like if we're going to narrow Main Street from, say, Lincoln to 11 Mile, as we did several years ago when we simply closed it, that once you put the signage up, the directional signage, it doesn't seem to me that there's a lot of staff time or aggravation attached to that. But staff can correct me if I'm wrong. And given my thinking in that direction, I'm inclined to agree with others here who have suggested that we go ahead and narrow Main Street through the downtown to 2 lanes instead of 4 to make it more possible for those restaurant and business expansions.
Commissioner Macy?
Yeah, I guess I'll go on that one first. So I had someone proposed other than Commissioner Douglas that we actually narrow the street, because it sounds like Mr. Twing was saying that that's not in this proposal at all, and I hadn't seen that elsewhere. And I wondered what Mr. Twing would say about the idea of sort of permanently narrowing it versus sometimes closing it down in the evening. And I'm also curious to see what Ms. Donahue has to say about the traffic load in the evening, like for the time that there's a lot of heavy use at Main Street restaurants between maybe, I don't know, 6 or 7 and 11 p.m. It would seem that after 7, probably traffic falls off, except mostly to come to that area. So I'm worried about the idea of narrowing Main Street to 2 lanes for the entirety of the day. Curious to hear what our staff have to say. I have more questions after that.
Well, and I would want a little more input from the engineer and Holly if she's got any numbers. I don't have any numbers that tell me traffic volumes per hour of the day. So it's hard to say when that is. Intuitively, obviously, rush hour is different. It's the high volume and would be the difficult time of day for vehicles to get through town. And I think taking them out, barricades out, putting them back would be very cost prohibitive from either staff standpoint or the business owner standpoint, versus simply choosing to narrow it for the summer and putting the traffic control devices in place and then allowing the businesses to use that, on-street parking spaces over the summer. Conversely, I think a few years ago, the commission closed Main Street for a few blocks just on the weekends. And that was prior to Aaron's time here, I believe. So I don't know if he's got a cost numbers for what that happened in the past, but I think it would be difficult to take it in, take it out, put it in, take it out, put it in over an extended period of time.
If I may just jump in, Tim, yeah, that would over time really become costly and be a burden on staff to install something that would be permanent throughout the summer. Yeah, we could do that with enough planning, and I don't have a number on that, but that certainly could be done.
Yeah, and I can comment a little bit on the traffic that we see. So Main Street, just using SEMCOG data, it's about 16,000 vehicles per day in usual times. Obviously, traffic is lower now. I talked with the TIA today about a separate issue, but their estimation is that traffic volumes will be down about 20% for the next couple months or so. You know, it's just a prediction, but they expect some people, or quite a few people, will still be working from home or are laid off and not going to work. So they're predicting about a 20% reduction in that. So it's closer to 13,000 vehicles a day. It's still a lot. I agree with Aaron and with Tim that it'll be much simpler if we have 1 lane each way consistently. And I think that's much safer for drivers as well. They know what to expect. They get used to it and adapt to it over time, as opposed to trying to switch it several times a week, for example, or for a weekend and changing it back. And then not to mention the cost to do that as well. That's a lot of maintenance for DPS, and then also police often have to get involved too when we start making changes just to help with the safety of everything. So those are my thoughts on it.
Ms. Donahue, that's and maybe Mr. Twing, that's about the narrowing of the lanes. But to be clear, if we narrowed the lanes, kept them that way, and we decided that the restaurateurs and the retailers came to us and said, hey, we want to close off this block of Main Street, and we put up barricades with a little bit of police presence to direct traffic, that would be, let's say on a Friday or Saturday night, like now and then, that would be different. That would be, a lot easier just to put up a couple barricades like we did last year and say, hey, you got to turn right or left, versus narrowing the lanes. Am I right with that presumption?
And Mayor, I would say yes. The occasional closing a street down would be no different than a summer special event, and we have a lot fewer of those this summer. So that sort of thing here again, with enough notice on that for our staff to plan for it, it wouldn't be very disruptive on occasion.
Commissioner Douglas? I heard well, we'll go with the karate chop, Melanie Macy.
So, first of all, I want to say that I must have not said it quite right, but you said it correctly for me, Mr. Mayor, that's what I was asking, like whether or not we had to narrow the lanes or if we could possibly just close it down on weekend nights. Weeknights. Weekend nights. And have that work, and if that would be much of a burden. It sounds like it's less of a burden, but it also sounds like staff is generally saying that it's easier to do one thing consistently for the whole summer than it is to change it even for the weekends, which I understand. And with the 20% reduction in traffic, I think it's possible maybe to narrow those lanes, but I'm still worried about that as a long-term possibility. Other questions I had, Mr. Twing had talked about leaving some of the spots open for carryout. Would that be possible with the narrowing of if we narrowed Main Street? And also for those carryout, I'm pretty concerned about that. Like, I think that's going to continue to be a major piece of their business going forward, for at least for the next few months. And I want to make sure that that's something that in all these plans that coming in is being considered for the surrounding businesses. So if Mr. Twin can comment about the carryout spaces. And I have more questions.
Yeah, I would think that we would do that as part of any design. If we narrow the streets, again, it's a design issue as far as identifying where someone could stop, pull off, so they're not in the travel lane that's left, and park and either run in and get carry out, or the Uber vehicles stopping in there, something stopping on each block to do that quick in and out.
And remember, for most of Main Street where the restaurants are, Commissioner Macy, we have the alley as well. And you could just convert those spots to, pick up 15-minute parking only on those spots too. There's some creativity that can go in it. But that's just on the east side of Main.
Yeah. Okay. The other question I had was on some of the things that are prohibited. One of which is food trucks. I'm wondering what the thought was on why those are prohibited as part of this.
Well, primarily it goes back to the idea that we're trying to help the restaurants that's there, or the food service that's there. And so they would, if it was a restaurant, they're going to have their own kitchen to provide that service already. If they're not a restaurant, we wouldn't want them bringing in a food truck that's taking dollars away from a brick and mortar facility.
I think we've talked about whether or not that is true in the past, and it's not clear to me that it is necessarily, but it seems in this instance particularly, where all restaurants, even if they do have some outdoor space, are probably going to have a smaller capacity than they normally do, that bringing in another service, if someone comes downtown and then finds out that the restaurants are all full, just seemed to me like something we could experiment with. Curious what other commissioners are thinking about that. The other question I have was about there's something about additional signage. I didn't quite get what was being prohibited. Like, they're going to have to be some kind of sandwich boards, right, to say this is what the restaurant is, and so what's being prohibited by that?
They already have the right in the CBD to put up sandwich board signs, so they can already put those up. It's just the intent was not to allow them to have more signage than what's already allowed under the sign ordinance.
Like on the railing, those big banners that can zip tie across.
Just to be clear that was it. But businesses can already put up various types of signs and to identify how they're going to do it. Just briefly to go back to the food trucks real quick, though, the intent here is not to allow a food truck to apply to come to downtown and provide a service. This is intended only to be for those businesses that actually have property either through a leasehold or an ownership. This permit process is not intended to be something where they don't have a facility in Royal Oak. They can come in and make application for a location.
So I got that that was the intent, and I thought we were talking about being flexible with this summer and the plans, and I'm just curious what the other commissioners' thoughts are on it.
Okay.
Commissioner Douglas?
I will answer and say that I am not in favor of bringing food trucks into our downtown. I think Mr. Twing phrased it very well. Our job here is to protect the businesses, the tax-paying businesses that we want to succeed and keep our downtown the strong entertainment district that it is. I had my hand raised earlier, though, to ask the question, what if we made Main Street 3 lanes instead of 2? I mean, that would free up, that would, move traffic away from those parking spaces where restaurants might be locating. It would make it easier for, traffic coming through town to make turns onto side streets, which is where we want them anyway. That might be a solution to a compromise on the street narrowing idea.
Are you thinking that we would restripe the streets?
Maybe.
But that's the only way I could see 3 lanes, because I think the way they're marked now, and how you can correct me if I'm wrong, but there are 2 in each direction, and then the parking lane. I think when we narrowed it before, when we did the bike lanes, we restriped lanes, and that's just an expense. That's just a cost.
Yeah, it's a fairly significant expense. So you have to cover all the existing lines and then restripe the new lanes and then take it all away and fix it all. So it's doable for sure. I don't know if it's the cost justified here.
Okay, fair enough. Thanks.
Commissioner Perush, you had your hand up.
Yes, I would just agree with Commissioner Douglas that I don't think food trucks belong as part of this program. The intent of the program is to assist the existing downtown businesses that are struggling. It's not a community promotion, downtown promotion type program. It's targeted to assist the struggling downtown businesses. And I don't think bringing food trucks in any way whatsoever helps them.
Commissioner Dubak?
I would just, on the food trucks, I'd agree in the context of what we're doing here. To Commissioner Macy's point, if there's limited capacity at the restaurants because we're allowing for proper social distancing. So if we bring in food trucks that don't have designated space, so we're bringing more bodies, but we don't have anywhere for them to sit and dine safely at a social distance, it's defeating the purpose of everything we're doing. So I think food trucks are a conversation for another day, but I think as we respond to try and slowly reopen and let people participate in activities in the downtown in a safe way, I don't see a place for it in this way.
Commissioner Perush?
We have to remember too that the farmers market is resuming their food truck rallies this week. I think there's one this coming Wednesday. It's for takeout only. You can't sit down and eat inside or outside. But if you're interested in food trucks, they already are down in the farmers market at least once a month, and will continue unless things get really ugly again. And my recollection is that a lot of the downtown businesses, not a lot, that's not appropriate. Some of the downtown restaurants were not real happy with the food truck rallies because they think that it takes business away from them. I'm not so sure that that's accurate, but I think to introduce even more food trucks into the downtown in the middle of this economic struggle, I think will put some businesses really over the edge in terms of their feelings about us and whether or not we were doing things appropriate.
I think there's a conversation in the long run about food trucks, but I think what we're trying to do here, I think we got to keep it flexible and we got to keep it simple. And I don't know, adding that dynamic, if it creates, more headaches than problems it solves. And so I think it's all about moving with speed right now. And I think that, decomplicating it as best as possible. And if somebody comes up with a creative idea, let's look at plain and audible down the road, this commission. But, I think keep it simple, keep it easy, keep it flexible, and, you know, keep the trump cards in our pocket where, you know, if something goes bad, we can revoke. And I think that's a formula that we've had success with other mediums, you know, the dancing permits and things like that. So I do have a few questions. I think, so Main Street, I'll just make it clear. I think, you know, now's the time not to be gun shy. The worst consequence that we have if we take Main Street down, I get the traffic volumes, I get all that. And I get that we'll divert traffic and a few people will be upset about it. But you know, the core and the heartbeat of Royal Oak, one of the cores and heartbeats is our downtown. And it's, you know, making sure that, you know, these restaurants and retailers have enough space, like Commissioner Dubuck said, which is a very good point. It's not just for the businesses, so all of us can, you know, feel safe when we, you know, start to repatronize these businesses in a physical form. And I think that, you know, giving that flexibility to people and encouraging people to park in the parking garage and not search for those spots and do all that will reduce traffic. And yeah, there might be a little jam here or there, but I think, you know, we're not going to get away from, you know, and be able to solve every problem. We have to focus on the problem that's in front of us right now. And that's making sure that our community has a place to shop and eat, both in the short term and in the long term, and that it's safe and flexible and easy. And I think that if we, you know, move forward with narrowing lanes and affording those businesses the opportunities to get creative, yeah, there'll be a traffic backup, but that's a symptom personally I'm willing to risk and take for the, you know, overall objective of ensuring, you know, that our residents and our business owners have, you know, some prosperity. And it's all temporary. It's all up to October 31st. We have to keep that in mind. None of this is permanent, and we're not going to get it perfect, but we can't get it late. And we can't, you know, be so scared of our shadow that, you know, we don't do great things to make our community move from survival mode to thrival mode during these challenging times. So I'm okay personally being bold, and I would support the removal of the sentencing in paragraph 10 regarding Maine. I get where staff's coming from, but I think that's why they presented it to us as electeds, because we have other things to consider more than just traffic counts. I do have a question for Mr. Twing. You know, my thought on denials, I mean, coming directly to the city commission, is there a way, like, we can, and Mr. Brake, I'm going to give you 100 reasons to hate me, so maybe this is the first one. You know, maybe it makes sense to have Mr. Brake review any potential denial, or that denials can go to him first before they come to the city commission, just to get, you know, a different set of eyes on it. And so that he's aware, because we know that in these times, you know, denials are going to be hot topics, and, you know, we want to make sure that we're all informed. I don't know how Mr. Brake feels about that. I don't know how Mr. Twing feels about that. But I'd like to have that layer in there of assurance that maybe Mr. Brake, before a denial is made, can say, yeah, I agree with staff. Or, hey, did you think of this? Maybe he brings some different ideas and ultimately is accountable for the whole mix of stuff that goes on, you know, with this project. Mr. Brake, do you have any thoughts on that?
Other than, I think those would be rare instances, and it's a matter of perhaps concern regarding public safety would be an issue that would come about based on physical limitations. That's anything that comes to mind. I think it's more of being expeditious, that not waiting for a commission meeting. But I believe Mr. Twing can correct me that someone can appeal my decision to the city commission, but I may be misspeaking.
As far as revoking, yes, all the appeals would end up going to the city commission would be the intent. And I would think before staff denies something, obviously we're going to tell the petitioner why we think it's wrong or what they need to modify, and give them ample opportunity to modify to address whatever concerns we raise. I think the denials that we're going to get into is where there is just no effort to make those modifications, and staff feels that there's a safety issue or a complaint issue. You know, I'll give just a wide example, is we may get a business on Woodward that wants to use their entire parking lot for outdoor seating versus a proportionate amount that's based on the seating they're taking out of the inside, and staff may tell them no, because we don't want all of the cars that may want to park there parking in the neighborhood.
Right.
Those are the sorts of scenarios where we may run into something, but and Mr. Brake is going to always have the final say on a staff denial. So,
okay. So Mr. Brake will be informed of any potential denial before it comes, you know, so he's prepared and he can say, hey guys, I hear where you're coming from, but let's think twice about denying this one, or maybe if we do this. I just want to make sure that there's sort of a almost like an internal arbitrator, just to get a second set of eyes on these things, because it can be consuming when you know what I mean? That's all I'm asking for. And I think if you guys have that alignment, I think we'll be in good shape. And not to say that your answer will be different, but I just think, you know, every applicant should be entitled to the best due process. And if, you know, staff has concerns and, you know, Mr. Brake, you know, on a handful of, I imagine it's only going to be a few, can get ahead of the game versus waiting for a commission meeting to at least, you know, maybe even think about another negotiable item to make it safer or better. At least we've given everyone that shot. Not to say that there is, because Tim, what you're saying absolutely makes sense, but just as a matter of process, I think it'd be helpful.
Mayor, if I can jump in, just I would be looking for reasons to say yes.
Right. Right. And I think, I mean, the one advantage we have with Mr. Brake is he's got some ideas that, you know, we're not, you know, privy to, because he's, you know, coming from a different, I mean, we got to embrace his newness for a while until we overwhelm him and he just gets absorbed, and then we have to talk about that. But I think it'd be good to pass some of these things by him if we can have a denial. That's all.
I agree.
The other question, we didn't talk too much about, Mr. Twing, I appreciate you bringing it up, about private property and parking lots and things of that nature. So the intent here is if an applicant comes and they have their own private property and they have 100 tables and, you know, they're allowed to move 50 outside and they have the space to do it, even though that might tie up a little bit of the parking or some of the parking, if they can do it and not, you know, like you say, fill up their entire parking lot and try to triple the size of their business for 3 months, but, you know, be reasonable. You know, even though it might take some parking away, we might have some overflow into the neighborhoods, as long as they're meeting that requirement where they're not, their overall capacity remains the same with the outdoor. I mean, those things are going to be approved, right?
The intent of that was to put a maximum limit on what they could propose, and then go from there. If it seems reasonable, we would approve it. If there's complaints generated that we get non-responses from, we may tell them to reduce the size of it.
Okay.
So
the benefit they get is fast administrative approval, notwithstanding major safety concerns. But on the flip side, you know, if problems do arise, you know, they got to be flexible, that they might have to make modifications. So, you know, it's a living, breathing process here.
And in terms of the resolution, if you wanted, you don't need to eliminate item 10. I would just take out the portion that references the annual average daily traffic volumes of 10,000. Strike that portion. Because the intent of that line was to allow establishments in the CBD to use on-street parking. We would not allow establishments outside the CBD to use any parking in the right-of-way, i.e. Woodward or anywhere else. We wouldn't consider those outside the CBD.
So in the end, we have a plan here that's going to grow the outdoor retail dining space for business owners in the city. It's flexible. Every situation is going to be unique. We're going to work. What do we think like the lead time is to approve these sort of, I mean, are we looking weeks out, or are we looking, you know, I mean, we're not asking for architectural drawings with, I mean, if they provide a to scale drawing, you know, necessary detail to meet the provisions. I mean, are we looking, what's the turnaround? Are we going to have 6 weeks of backlog and find out that a great idea fell on its face, or are we going to see these things like approved in a few days? What's your thoughts on that?
The intent is to try and have an application form online sometime tomorrow or Wednesday, so that people could start using it. Judy Davis has already started putting together the form. After tonight's meeting, we'll try to finalize that form. It's going to have a fillable type form. It's going to require that they upload certain documents that are signed. If they're in the public right of way, it'll have an attached license agreement to it that they just need to fill out and upload, and as well as the insurance could upload. And it won't let them submit it unless those things are attached. Now, obviously, you could attach something that's not relevant, but it's going to require an attachment in order to submit it, with the idea that we're not chasing applicants for additional information. They have to submit it. Once it's here, it's going to go through probably the police department, engineering, probably DPS, fire, and I'll have a checkbox for everyone to, if they're okay with it, to check off on it. Once that's done, we'll be done and it'll be approved. Now, if someone's looking for more information or detail, then we'll have to get back to the applicant. And depending on how fast they reply with what we need, we'll get back to it. I don't think it's anyone's intent to spend a great deal of time on these.
Right. And once we approve the initial flood coming in, it's very manageable. So we can do like all hands on deck the first week or two. And then after that, it's, you know, you get through the hump, that initial hump. I guess the only other question I have is there's been a lot of discussion about social districts and some of the stuff the state is doing and whatnot. At this time right now, we don't have the ability to allow for these permanent social districts. We still have to do everything through temporary permits, et cetera, notwithstanding the MLCC or other, if the state passes certain laws, affecting the MLCC. So right now, if we do shut down Main Street, or we shut down Washington, or we shut down a street, we would just have to do a series of, if they wanted outdoor cafe, those businesses would just have to extend in and update their permits and add their extra seating and do all that. We just couldn't have these social districts yet until the state blesses it, unless we went down the event of like special permits and all of that with charities and whatnot, and that becomes a huge headache. But until the state acts, we're kind of stuck right now with, just expanding cafes permits if we do close down a street. Is that correct?
That's my understanding. And a liquor license establishment is still going to have to apply to, after we give it an approval, they're still going to have to apply to the MLCC and get approval up there. So we can approve it, but they're still going to have to get that blessing at the state level. At least that's my understanding as of last week.
So it's not as easy when we see like Bay City shuts down their entire street. It's not that, they still have to follow the same rules and guidelines that we have to follow with the state and MLCC, et cetera. Okay. Any other questions? I don't see any questions. Commissioner Macy?
I move approval.
You move approval.
Removal of paragraph 10.
The statement that you move approval with the change of the sentence in paragraph 10 about the limits on traffic. Yeah. Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Macy, second by Commissioner Duba. Commissioner Douglas.
Do we need to leave in the speed limits of 25 miles an hour or less? I mean, I'm trying to think. Are there streets in the CBD that have speed limits greater than that?
No.
No? Okay.
Anybody else? All right, I'll call for the vote as I see him. Commissioner Dubuck. Aye. Mr. Gibbs. Mr. Gibbs. Yes. Okay. Commissioner Douglas.
Yes.
Mr. Macy.
Yes.
Mr. Prush.
Yes.
Mr. LeVasseur.
Yes. I
vote yes. Okay. All right. Well, great work, great innovation, great flexibility. That's awesome on our end, much harder on your end when you have to go through the process of looking at the, we got an excellent team here. And we're going to do the safety checks. We're going to make sure paramount people are safe, whether that's from the virus or whether or not it's from traffic. And then from there, we'll remain flexible and reasonable. And, you know, to the businesses out there, you know, let's get working on some ideas. Let's not go crazy if you have a private parking lot or whatever. Let's make sure we manage with expectations here and, you know, look forward to, you know, getting some success here with this program throughout the summer. Okay. All right. Let me go to my other screen here. That brings us, are we on item? Yes, we're on item 17. Discussion of a resolution in solidarity with those demanding justice for George Floyd and meaningful change to address structural inequality and systematic racism, as requested by Commissioner Dubuck in support of Commissioner Macy and Commissioner Douglas. I'm going to hand it over to Commissioner Dubuck.
Thank you, Mayor. First, I just want to thank and acknowledge the residents who called in tonight in support of the resolution, those who have contacted me, and I'm sure all of us over the last week with questions and messages and suggestions. So we brought this forward because you're like the millions lifting up their voices around the country, including here in Royal Oak with a massive demonstration this weekend of thousands of folks in our streets. You know, I'm outraged and anguished by the endless onslaught of injustice resulting from the systemic racism we continue to fail to address as a community and as a nation. And this isn't just about the murder of George Floyd or Eric Garner or Michael Brown or Breonna Taylor or Tamir Rice or Trayvon Martin. It's about addressing the conditions that force us to keep reliving these tragedies over and over and over again. So this is it's a demand. What's happening right now is a demand that we finally reconcile with our deep-seated, the deep-seated racism that has its roots in the birth of our country and has been passed down from generation to generation and reinforced and exacerbated by public policy and socioeconomic systems deliberately crafted to maintain a status quo of segregation and white supremacy. You know, we at this table, you know, and in our community, we did not create this system, but many of us have benefited from it while others have suffered. And we have a choice now. We can let it persist, or we can take action and begin doing the work to bring us closer to being the city and the nation that we aspire to be. So tonight, in the spirit of addressing the issue head on, I've brought forward a resolution with support of Commissioners Douglas and Macy, recognizing the problem, stating our solidarity with the protests, demanding justice, and committing ourselves to action. And if I can, Mayor, I'd like to try and read it.
Yes, Commissioner Dubuck, please do so.
All right. Whereas the people of Royal Oak believe in the innate dignity of all people, whereas the people of the city of Royal Oak hold steadfast. Sorry, I lost my spot. Just had a pop up to the belief that we are all created equal with certain inalienable rights, including the right to equal protection under the law. And whereas recent events on the national stage demand that people in communities of conscience speak out in defense of and reaffirm their commitment to these most basic values. Whereas the people of the city of Royal Oak recognize that our nation was built on an economy based on the enslavement of Africans and Black Americans and has yet to heal the scars left by the hypocrisy, brutality, and psychological trauma of that abhorrent institution. And whereas the people of the city of Royal Oak recognize that the racism used to justify and reinforce that perverse system remains a pervasive presence across American culture and permeates our governmental, economic, and educational institutions. And whereas the people of the city of Royal Oak recognize that the murder of George Floyd is only the most recent horrific example of the heartbreaking injustice, breathtaking injustice, which persists due to our continued failure to address systemic racism in our country. And whereas the people of the city of Royal Oak recognize that across this nation and in our own community, African Americans and many other people of color must persevere daily against the barriers and indignities put upon them by systemic bias and racism. And whereas the people of the city of Royal Oak understand that we have a duty to speak out for the civil rights of all of our brothers and sisters. And whereas the people of the city of Royal Oak understand that demanding justice is not an altruistic or sympathetic act, but rather it is a moral imperative which serves to defend the freedom of all. Whereas Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. stated, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And whereas the people of the city of Royal Oak recognize, and I'd like to edit that should read recognize, not recognized, past tense. Recognize that the city itself is an institution, that it is imperfect, and that we must be conscious and proactive in challenging norms, confronting unjust systems, and seeking to be better every day. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the city of Royal Oak stands in solidarity with the millions of individuals and conscientious organizations across the nation, although I guess it could be across the world, given that there's protests happening in countries all around the world, demanding justice for George Floyd and meaningful action to address structural inequality and systemic racism. And I would like to amend this, be it therefore resolved that the city of Royal Oak supports and encourages those lifting up their voices in peaceful protest, and we join them in declaring that Black Lives Matter. And be it finally resolved that the city of Royal Oak pledges itself to growing stronger as a community by being proactive in seeking to heal the racial scars we have inherited and taking action toward real systemic change. And I would move this resolution for approval.
Sorry, we have a motion by Commissioner Dubuck, and I thought Commissioner Macy with the second first. Discussion on this resolution. Commissioner Macy.
Just want to thank Commissioner Dubuck for his leadership in bringing this forward and drafting this excellent resolution.
Any other discussion? Yeah, I'll just add, I also would like to thank Commissioner Dubuck for crafting and authoring this resolution. I think it really captures the sentiment of many of us up in the city of Royal Oak, as well as on this commission and within staff, about how we feel about the real issue of systemic racism. How, you know, now is not the time for ambiguous or superfluous statements, but rather meaningful words coming from this body to do our part to let our people know and everybody around us know what we stand for and what we value and what we intend and plan to do our part related to systemic racism and the consequences that have endured our nation for way too long. So I applaud his efforts. I think it's very well written. I accept the amendments offered up tonight and look forward to voting for this resolution. All right. Nobody else? All right. I'll call Commissioner Perush.
No, I was just unmuting so that we can vote.
Oh, Commissioner Perush?
Yes.
Commissioner Dubuck?
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbs?
Yes.
Commissioner Douglas?
Yes.
Commissioner Macy?
Yes.
Commissioner LeVasseur?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Unanimously passed. This is a great representation of the city of Royal Oak. Thank you. This brings us to item 18, which is a discussion to establish a Human Rights Commission as requested by Commissioner Dubuck and supported by Commissioner Macy and Commissioner Douglas. Once again, Commissioner Dubuck, you took the lead on this. We're grateful for that. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, so in the spirit of beginning to take real action, the idea of a Human Rights Commission has, kind of been a long time coming. As I've mentioned, a public comment, I've spoken with a few residents about it. We know that there are several examples from other cities of successful commissions that don't just serve as a sounding board for concerns and complaints, but really a place to bring new ideas, to break down systemic barriers, identify institutional bias and resolve it, so we continue pursuing being a better and more inclusive city. So I'm not proposing a specific construct or makeup for this yet. Rather, my intent tonight is, to engage a little bit of a discussion about it, and then give staff direction. I know that our new city manager actually comes from a city that had a human rights commission, so I'm sure he has some insights on it. I know there's a variety of different models. I know they generally have some interaction with the police force, which I think would be healthy to have that space as well. But that is the concept tonight, is to give staff direction to identify some of the best models in the country. Some of our neighbors have models, and then bring us something to consider for implementation in the near future here in Royal Oak.
Thank you, Commissioner DeBuck. I see Commissioner Douglas.
Yeah, I would like to ask Mr. Brake, knowing that the city that he comes from had a Human Rights Commission, I'd be interested in hearing your personal experience with this, Mr. Brake.
Well, thank you for asking that question. You know what, that group functioned very well in Morgantown. They were a voice of those that were either unrepresented or the segment of the population that was marginalized. So the Human Rights Commission, when it was in Morgantown, West Virginia, was an advisory group that worked closely with the city manager's office. During the time that I worked there, they developed a non-discrimination ordinance, and was probably a monumental change that was enacted by the city council during the time that I worked there. And not only enacting the ordinance, but also an investigation procedure and to remedy what complaints would come forward. So have some insight of working with a group like that represented different interest areas, whether it's demographics, whether it's race or sexual orientation. This brings on many different dynamics. Generally, this group was focused on employment, housing, and public service sort of issues, but it can view in many different shapes and forms. There are national organizations that give very good guidance of what's called a municipal equity index, where you can benchmark as you create such an organization. How does that compare to peers that have such an entity? And also give some parameters of what sort of topics that they can take on. So I wouldn't profess myself to be an expert, but did do some work in that area and can help kind of guide that conversation as we look at the formation. I'm not suggesting by any means that you replicate that here, but nevertheless saw some of the pitfalls that the group ran into, and maximize the greatest possibility that they will be successful. So would be happy to take that lead and work with Commissioner DeBuck and whoever is deemed appropriate to come up with a proposal and bring that back and for the commission's consideration.
And if I may continue, Mr. Mayor, we heard from one of our speakers tonight, calling for a town hall on this subject. And I really think we should, before we start putting things down on paper, be listening to the people in our community, making sure we are meeting our challenges and serving the needs of our people. I'm also sensitive to something a couple people mentioned. One is that people of color find themselves overburdened being the participants in town halls like this, and we need to strike a balance between seeking their input and yet not putting the burden of this on their shoulders. And I think that's part of the challenge. And I think a town hall, kind of a public convening, would help us start to flesh out those ideas and identify leaders and identify the people that need to be involved in the solution.
Absolutely.
Commissioner DeBuck?
Yeah, I think a town hall is completely appropriate, but I don't think the suggestion was that the town hall inform or delay our creating a structure for the formation of a human rights council. I think moving forward with that sort of community forum is incredibly valuable, and we should certainly do it. But I don't think that's a necessary step before we actually take action on voting direct staff to bring us back recommendations on the structure for a human rights commission.
But I assume that will be part of staff's process. I trust it will be one of their recommendations to engage with the community in the development of the ordinance or of the commission.
Commissioner Macy?
Yeah, I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I love the idea of a town hall, but I also feel the sense of urgency that Commissioner Dubak is talking about. A lot of these issues been sitting on for hundreds of years, and can't wait any longer. So I think we can move forward on both of them. I love the town hall idea when I heard that today. I think it can go, like I said, I think they can go forward at the same time. I think the town hall will bring people awareness that we're doing this and bring interested candidates to apply to the commission, which I think would be really useful. And as Commissioner Douglas said, also bring forward some ideas about what this commission can do. So I think we've heard some public comment. I've heard some via email and in person as well. People are thinking about different ways to use this. Not only some parts are oversight, some parts are as a reference, some parts are engaging the community. There's lots of different ways that this body can act, and I think we want to be hearing what Royal Oak needs and what Royal Oak wants. So anyway, I fully support the idea of a town hall, and I think we should move forward with that pretty fast because I don't want to delay. I don't think it has to delay the formation of this commission.
Yeah, I'd argue too. I think the town hall is really about talking about the issues. And I think what we're talking about right now is the framework on how to address those issues. Right. For me, having that framework and having that piece of clay and saying, okay, that makes the town halls much more valuable and useful, that, we have some sort of mechanism to address it. Because if you just go and listen, yeah, and we really haven't thought it out on the back end, you're just listening and you're not acting. And I want to go in, not just with open ears, but with a set of tools that we can use to resolve any issues that we need to resolve. So I think that they're not mutually exclusive. I agree with that. And I think that we can start to, put the framing up and get at least something, working that can evolve so we can address those issues. I see Commissioner Prush had her hand up.
Yes. In terms of the town hall, I don't think that needs to be preliminary to starting to work to put the framework together. I think it's definitely a very important component of the development of this concept, but I don't think it has to be done first. I think it can either be done as you have a draft of a program put together, or even on an ongoing basis, depending upon which population groups or interested party groups you want to specifically hear from at a given time. That's my first point. The second thing is that I hope that in the terms of the development of this and the homework that has to be done in order to put together a framework, that you all reach out to some of the other major institutions in the community, like OCC, which is what one of the public commenters mentioned, as well as Beaumont Hospital, and perhaps some of the other larger institutions in town, the Downtown Business Group and so on, just to get their thoughts and advice as to what policies and what programs have worked for them, because their obviously experience would be useful, I think, in this regard. So I hope that they, and the school districts, that's another, definitely a very interested party, because there's such a large component in our community. So I'm just hoping that as you go forward with this and developing this framework, you get those institutions somehow involved. The third thing is that I would volunteer to assist. I'm retired. I have time to do research. I would be glad to sit in front of a computer and pull out examples or whatever background homework type assistance you guys would need. I have time to do it. I'm not working. You guys are, and I'd be glad to spend some time doing some research on this.
Very good. Commissioner Dubak.
So I will move to direct staff to bring us back concept for our Human Rights Commission, structure of a Human Rights Commission, to be considered by the City Commission.
Wonderful. Do we have a second? Second by Commissioner Douglas. All right, discussion? All right, with none, I'll call for the vote. We'll start from the bottom. Commissioner Gibbs. Commissioner Gibbs,
Yes.
Commissioner Prush,
Yes.
Commissioner Dubak,
Yes.
Commissioner Douglas,
Yes.
Commissioner Macy,
Yes.
Commissioner LeVasseur,
Yes.
and I vote yes, unanimous vote. All right, well, we look forward to seeing, what staff comes back with best practices research, taking the advice of Commissioner Prush and Commissioner Dubak and other community organizations. And, this is something I think that, we can start with a piece of clay and mold it over time. It's better to be, roughly right than exactly late. And, we'll learn along the way too. And so I'm very grateful for unanimous vote on this from the commission. So, all right. Is there any other business for the betterment of the city of Royal Oak? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Commissioner Gibbs?
I'll make that motion.
We have a motion to adjourn by Commissioner Gibbs, second by Commissioner Prush. Discussion on this motion. All right, with none, I'll call for the vote. I vote yes. LeVasseur?
Yes.
Macy?
Yes.
Commissioner Douglas?
Yes.
Commissioner Dubak?
Yes.
Commissioner Prush?
Yes.
Commissioner Gibbs?
Yes.
All right, we're adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and thank you to staff for keeping with us here at almost 11 o'clock at night. Wish everyone a safe and healthy week. Take care.